Alrighty, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this COVID edition of the AmiBroker Canada User Group meeting. Just bear with me, gang. I just got to let a few more people in the room. So let's just do a quick sound check. Can everybody hear me and see the screen okay? If you could just drop a quick yes in the chat box, that'd be super helpful. Good evening, Marcel. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Marsten. Thank you, Peter. Lots of names I recognize. I'm glad you could all make it tonight. Okay, so I'd like to formally and officially welcome you to the AmiBroker Canada User Group monthly meeting. This is meeting number 31, and we are April the 6th, 2021. So let's get started. Okay, just a quick disclaimer. This group is a user interest group only. It's not affiliated with AmiBroker, the company, in any way whatsoever. All right, and just another quick disclaimer, nothing discussed should be considered advice of any kind. Use all information presented at your own risk. Our guest presenter, Marsten, may be showing some trading strategies and related information. None of this should be considered advice. Again, use all information presented at your own risk. Okay, and if you can't take notes fast enough, no worries. Tonight's meeting is being recorded. It'll be available in a day or two at our forum at www.amibroker-canada.org. In order to gain access to the recording, you'll just need to be a registered user, which is free. You can just sign up at the website indicated. So once you're registered, you'll be on our mailing list if you opt in at the time of registration. So you'll receive an email notice when the recording is posted. We typically post out the recording the very next day, usually sometime before lunch or after lunch, before dinner in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. So if you have to jet out early, don't worry about it. Everything will be recorded, provided we don't have any technical glitches. All right, and a special thanks to the Canadian Society of Technical Analysts for their ongoing support of the AmiBroker Canada User Group, specifically Blair Crothers. He's our CSTA Oakville chapter head, my local chapter. Lyle Dunn out in Vancouver. He's our Vancouver chapter head, and our business manager, Regan Uke. If you're not already a CSTA member, there are countless reasons to join. I'd suggest maybe just having a quick look at the CSTA website at csta.org. And I believe Blair couldn't make it tonight, but they do have a monthly meeting next week, which is probably going to be more of a member meeting, I believe he told me today. All right, now future meeting dates, mark your calendar for next Tuesday, May the 4th. And on that day, I'll probably say, may the 4th be with you. So we'll pick things up again next month as usual on that date. Upcoming speakers that are penciled in. So we don't have a lot of meetings scheduled for the future, gang. Most of the meetings we're going to have going forward will probably be member meetings. We have some members that I need to get back to in order to schedule in some of the ideas that they've emailed me. We do have some presenters in the wings, but nothing confirmed yet. So most likely next meeting will be a user group meeting. Richard R., if he's available, I'm going to reach out to him to talk a little bit about GitHub. Otherwise, this will be scheduled for a future meeting. I still haven't heard back from Richard Dale yet from Norgate, but I believe he's still going to present in the future at some point as well. Okay, so just hang tight, gang. Now, just a quick reminder about the Member Connect section. Larry P. has suggested that we encourage our users to connect with other members that have like interests or that want to work in small working groups, maybe work on code, or if you're looking for a trading buddy, the Member Connect forum section is designed for you. So just have a look at the website at that specific forum if that's something you're looking for. If you're looking for a trading buddy, if you're looking for somebody to do some coding with, that's the place to hook up and connect with other like-minded users and members. All right, in our agenda tonight, we'll cover off, as we usually do, on our objectives, why the group was started, and then we'll get into our main presentation with Marsten Parker, who I like to call the unknown market wizard for obvious reasons that you'll find out about very soon. Okay, so our objectives. Why was this group started? So this group was started to act as a mastermind group of intermediate to advanced users of AmiBroker, where the sum of our group effort is greater than each of our individuals' effort. So as a group, there's a multiplying effect, for those familiar with the mastermind concept, where we progress individual and group goals, we learn from each other, and importantly, we work through coding challenges. So there's some common objectives of learning the AmiBroker platform and applying related concepts. Strong focus on AmiBroker formula language programming for explorations, backtesting, and systematic trading, etc. Members learn new concepts maybe they were previously unaware of or struggling with, and provide each other support, and generally just to share ideas, including coding concepts, code snippets, possibly trading ideas, approaches, and strategies. Okay, with that out of the way, with our normal group business out of the way, let's get into the presentation. So what I'd like to do is, if you haven't seen the write-up yet, let me just quickly introduce our guest presenter, Marsten Parker. Marsten will be talking about systematic trading and his real test backtesting software, which looks super interesting. And I refer to Marsten as the unknown market wizard for the obvious reason that there's a chapter about Marsten in the new book, Unknown Market Wizards by Jack Schwager. And Marsten was in fact the only systematic trader featured in the entire book, which was a great feat. So Marsten has been a full-time systematic trader for more than 20 years now. His other passions include for music, specifically the violin, and computer programming. And his computer coding ability enabled him to build his own entire backtesting application called Real Test, which he recently made available. And he will be demonstrating tonight. I believe it was written in the C programming language. So tonight, Marsten will share his extensive experience about systematic trading over the years. And his presentation will focus on two main areas. So the first is Marsten's experiences with systematic trading, some how-tos, the challenges that he's faced, including how he's dealt with drawdowns that almost ended his trading career, plus some useful suggestions, tactics, and strategies for dealing with drawdowns. And secondly, Marsten will also share how his real test backtesting software works and how it compares to and differs importantly from AmiBroker, because obviously we are an AmiBroker user group. Now, I had mentioned that, I don't think a lot of people are looking to replace the AmiBroker platform. I know I'm not, but I'm always looking to add tools to my trading toolbox. For the last, I don't know, almost 2 months now, I've been working on learning Python, which has been an interesting exercise. So I'm always looking for tools that add value, and I hope you are all as well too. We have to continually, be learning and upgrading our knowledge and our skills and our tools in order to compete in these very competitive markets. So with that being said, let me just have a quick look and make sure nobody else is trying to get into the room. We've got about 45 people online right now, which is a pretty good meeting. And I'm sure we'll get about that many rewatches at least. So that's great. I'm glad you could all make it. Thanks for coming out. And importantly, Marsten, thank you for coming out. So maybe what we can do, Marsten, is I see your mic is on. Maybe we can just do a quick sound check.
I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Marsten. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let me just do that now. And I'm going to hand over the mic and the screen to you, Marsten. And if you need me to jump in at any time, just holler. I'm just a mouse button click away. And I just want to say thanks in advance for joining us tonight and for sharing your knowledge and your experience and the demo, which I'm super, excited about and really looking forward to. So thanks, Marsten. You've got the floor.
All right. Thanks, Dave, for having me on as a speaker to your group, and for having a culture where nobody's expected to have their cameras on, because it's always distracting to see your own face when you're trying to give a presentation. So that's delightful. So I put together a few PowerPoint slides. This is, I guess, similar to the outline that Dave has already given, maybe slightly different. I'm going to just give a brief history of my software career, and then a brief history of my trading career with those items listed there, and then get into my backtesting software, Realtest, and how it evolved. Realtest in comparison to AmiBroker, and do a live demo. And if there's enough time, I actually, Dave, you didn't tell me whether there's a time deadline on this meeting, but I can get into
honestly,
automation.
Marsten, we run till 9 o'clock. And,
Okay.
you know, I know like in our province, we are all basically under lockdown for the next month. So I know that nobody really has any time constraints. So we usually give our presenters the entire meeting if they need it. And, you know, we can even go over. So we
Right, great.
don't have any hard limits. So,
Well,
you know, take your time and enjoy.
as long as it remains interesting for everybody, and I can stay awake, I'll be happy to keep talking.
Sounds great.
All right, so this is my career history in a nutshell. Coming out of college, I wanted to be a concert violinist, so I went to New York City to a conservatory called the Mannes College of Music. Full disclosure, I tried to get into Juilliard but couldn't, so that was my second choice. After 4 years there, I realized I wasn't going to succeed in that career, so I moved back to Boston, where I grew up, and found a job at a computer store because I was into computers in high school as well. And through a combination of good luck, after about 3 months working at that computer store, I found a job at a startup company called Cortex, which had a product called Core Vision that I helped work on. Stayed there for about 5 years. And then they were still focused on their mini computer software, and I wanted to work on PC software, and I found another company called SoftBridge that was doing that. After about 3 years there, by then it was 1990, and the country was in an economic recession, and the company wasn't doing so well. But we were able to, 3 colleagues and I decided to leave and form a consulting company. And we got a gig working at Lotus, helping them port their 1-2-3 spreadsheet application to Unix. And we were hired as the QA department for that project. And so the first step we had to do was build some automated QA tools for Unix, for the Unix graphical interface X window, which was just early in its life back then. And so we came up with a very effective tool for that purpose, which we ended up being able to patent. You can see part of our patent there on my screen. And it was actually the first tool of its kind, and it's still how automated GUI QA is done today. We ended up merging with the other company that was contracting with Lotus on that port, which was called Segway Software, and selling that as a product across all platforms, Windows, Unix, and Mac, called QA Partner. Later, it got renamed to Silk Test. So that was my software career in a nutshell. Now, as it happens, we went public in 1996. And part of the reason was because one of the largest investor in the company was James Simons. He owned about 22%, according to this S1 form of ours. So anyway, all these people wanted their exits. So we went public at a time when almost anyone could. And this was my first introduction to the stock market. I had no interest in trading or stocks or commodities or anything before this. But I owned approximately 4% of the Segway stock. So I became interested in trading, and that's how that happened. This is actually our stock. You know, we went public in March 96. I think the IPO price was 18. It opened above 20. And it had a nice run up to over 40. And then in the very next quarter, we missed our numbers, and the stock got hit pretty badly, and it never really recovered. I ended up selling my shares kind of across gradually through 97 and 98. I think besides the ones I sold in the IPO, I think I averaged $12 a share or something like that overall. At one point in 02, it got below $1. It was it was kind of a tough time, especially the early 2000s for tech companies. But as it says there, Segway ended up getting bought by Borland in 2006, and then Borland got bought by Micro Focus, which still exists. And the product is still out there. It's called Silk Test. For anyone in the QA job, you might know it. Now, after the IPO, I opened my first brokerage account at Schwab, and I started dabbling in trading. And here you have my equity curve from 1997, my first attempts at trading. I had a plunge there was when I bought MLHR Herman Miller after seeing on CNBC that they announced they had good earnings. So I thought, oh, it must go up. And then it just kept dropping, and I did not sell. I held until the bottom. So that's that. On the basis of these results, I decided to quit my job and become a full-time trader. And somehow, by some miracle, after that, these were the results I had since then. So that's my equity curve on the top and the S&P 500 on the bottom. From 1998, when I switched to a more systematic approach, and I became fully automated and systematic at the start of 2000, but I was kind of semi-discretionary and semi-systematic in 98 and 99. So from 98 until 2012, that nice smooth run there, I averaged 27% a year, and I had a few 20% drawdowns, but none worse than that, or much worse than that, a little. And then things got a little rougher. I had my first losing calendar year in 2013. I made some innovations in 2014 that led to a big improvement, and then I got overconfident in them and added too much leverage and traded too aggressively, and had a nasty drawdown in 2015 and 16. Almost stopped trading. Then I've kind of retooled since then, and got off to a little slow start, but things are picking up recently. Those are my drawdowns that I've experienced. And so in terms of how I trade, I thought it would be good to start with what has not changed the entire time I've been trading. So my whole approach to trading is pretty straightforward. I just trade US common stocks. And I've always taken the approach of scanning the whole universe of stocks that have sufficient liquidity and are in the right price range, and scanning for daily setups based on a few simple rules, and having entry rules and exit rules. Kind of, a fairly high number of trades per year and fairly short holding period, always trading both sides. And so, yeah, that's always been what works for me. In terms of getting into the actual strategies, there really haven't been that many. I basically only traded two kinds of strategies, breakout and mean reversion. I mean, on some level, those are the only two kinds there are. But and for the first 15 years, it was just breakouts. Excuse me. So yeah, from the beginning, I wanted a long and a short, so that I was not just going with the market direction, buying breakout, shorting breakdowns. In 2014, it took me long enough, but I finally discovered this other thing called mean reversion. And then it took me a long time to get comfortable with it and to find something I was willing to trade. But eventually I did, and I added that and had 4 strategies. But my old strategies, as I mentioned, had kind of stopped working in 2012, 2013, or their edge was eroding anyway. So I traded them in 2014, but they didn't do anything. They were just flat the whole year, whereas the mean reversion pair was excellent. So then I decided to just drop the old strategies and focus completely on mean reversion. And that's when I got into trouble because I didn't understand the tail risk yet. You kind of have to learn that the hard way. So then I kind of restarted in 2016 and took a more conservative approach. And then I tried to find new breakout type strategies to add back in, and have done that. And then in the middle of last year, I came up with shorter term. I heard about the idea of mean reversion strategies that always exit the same day they enter, and came up with a pair of those that works well, and there was a good complement to everything else I've been doing. So that's my whole career in a nutshell right there. Now, here is for your interest, the first 2 completely mechanical systems that I traded, the complete rules of them. So we have, let's see here, I'm going to just grab an annotation tool here. There's one called Highlight, I think, Spotlight now. I was playing with this earlier, Select, there it is, right. Okay, so that, which I just briefly highlighted, is the strategy that the pair of systems that I traded throughout 2000. That was the first year that I was fully automated as well. And actually, I'm going to just change gears here for 1 second. No, let me talk about the strategies more. So yeah, I won't go through every single detail, but I just wanted you to have a feeling for the kind of rules I was using. So this is like universe definition. One oddity of how I traded throughout that period is that my position sizing was always a fixed number of shares. It was not a fraction of my account. It was a fixed number of shares. And it's because the person who I learned this trading system from did it that way as well. And on some level, that's kind of like using volatility-based position sizing, because lower price per share stocks have higher ATR in percent terms. But it's not exactly like that. So anyway, I use this price range. That's why I have had a cap of 70 as the maximum price per share, because I was always trading. If you look at my position size, which I have down here somewhere, 100 shares per 50K. So if you were trading a 100K account, every single trade would be a 200 share trade, and it would be part of your scan would be that yesterday's close was between 10 and 70, 250,000 share average volume. And then I was looking for a volume surge. Earlier in 98 and 99, we were just looking for like 2 times average volume or something like that. Now, when I got involved in back testing, which I'll cover later in this presentation, I think I concluded that instead of using the average, use the highest volume of the last 20 days and won at least 15% more than that. So that was my definition of a volume surge. And then the breakout or price surge, I wanted at least 5% for the long side. And I guess I had decided that I didn't want too much of a breakout, so I put a cap of 15%. And then the other key element, I'm still just focusing on the long side here, is before the breakout, there should have been some kind of consolidation, because you don't want to buy when it's already been going up a bunch of days in a row. So the way I came up with and we used to look for this consolidation visually on the chart. So when I went mechanical, I had to come up with a way of quantifying that, without getting into lots of fancy code that tries to describe how a chart looks, which I've never found really works. But so I just came up with this idea that you find the lowest close in the last X number of days, and you say that the close before the breakout should have been no more than Y% above that. So that you might call that an indicator. That was kind of the main indicator I used for these systems, was how overbought or not overbought was it. And as you'll see later, I ended up using that in my mean reversion systems as well. So I must have optimized that and decided that I wanted it to still be within 7% of the 20-day lowest close. And then, of course, I would have often have more stocks that meet these criteria than I could take. So I would rank them by volume over average, which is the unusualness of the volume. The exit rule was a 12% target or a $3 stop. Seems a little arbitrary, but that's what I did that year. And then I had another exit rule of, if it was a down day, like today's close less than yesterday's close, and the volume increased, so today's volume greater than yesterday's volume, that would be an exit rule, rather than waiting for it to get to the stop. And then I came up with this other idea of also using, if I had too many entries, I would just exit older positions. I had this idea that I thought of my capital as inventory, and I wanted to keep turning it over. So I would just sort my existing positions by their age and then by their net profit, and I would just keep exiting them in that order till I had freed up enough capital to take all the new setups that occurred. So I was constantly doing that, and that mechanism actually improved the results quite a bit. It's an interesting thing that you might want to play with, although it's pretty hard to model it in AmiBroker. You have to use a CBT. And oddly enough, old versions of Realtest had this mechanism built in, but the current version does not. Although I may put it back, because I'm getting curious to look at it again. I concluded, I'm jumping ahead, but I concluded in 2016, because I was using this mechanism for mean reversion, and it's part of what got me in trouble. And I wanted to take it out of the software, so I wasn't tempted to go back to it. So yeah, I covered the position size. Yeah, I have this maximum new per day. I've always used that in my strategies, and I had it at 10. And from the beginning, I had a philosophy that I don't want to ever use leverage in the sense of overnight leverage. I'm okay with going over 100% intraday, but not holding it overnight. Although I was quite fine with holding 100% per side, because then it's market neutral. Although in practice, I think it rarely got that high. Well, sometimes it did. Yeah, and the short side, I've always had my short side not exactly mirror image of the long side, but similar. I guess I had found that I could take more risk of going up to 150, although it's hard to imagine I would put on such large short positions, but I guess I was doing it. And I also, and with shorts, I remember finding early on that with longs, I wanted a kind of a breakout that wasn't too overdone, but whereas with shorts, a breakdown, kind of the more overdone it was, the better, at least until 2013, when that became a favorite long entry setup called BTFD. But so I wanted the shorts to break down by 5% or $1.50, whichever was more. It just basically required a larger breakdown for the lower price stocks than would otherwise not have been a 5% breakdown. I mean, more than a 5% breakdown, right? and anything up to 40% was fine. And then similar thing, it had to be within 5% of the 20-day highest close. But I also decided if it had dropped more than 10%, it could be within 10% of the 20-day highest close, because a bigger drop meant it had better odds and so on. The rest is pretty similar. And then, so this strategy in 2000, I ran it completely mechanically and I didn't change it at all that year. And I had a 66% year. So that turned out very well. And then I kept running it in 2001 and it had a 20% drawdown kind of right away in the first quarter, which was the biggest drawdown I'd had thus far. So that was concerning, and I kind of shut it off for a day or two probably, and retested everything and changed a lot of the parameters. And you can see I was probably over optimizing based on what some of these values were. But it was basically the same strategy. Let's see. Right. Okay. So when and why I make changes in my strategies. So yeah, any 20% drawdown I thought of as a system stop, and doesn't mean my career's over. Just time to take a pause, understand the cause, make adjustments if needed. I have to admit, whenever I'm in a smaller non-trivial drawdown like 10% is when I'm more likely to change my strategies. It's not a good approach, really, but I did it anyway. It's, as I say, it's inevitable psychologically sometimes. I think I'm probably getting better now at that, but I've done that a lot. Also, anytime I'll just experiment and tweak and try things. And if I find something that I think is a legitimate improvement, I'll put it in. I don't get religious about never touching a system. And I try not to touch it excessively. Everything's a balance. And yeah, seeing what works for what's working now for other traders, including discretionary traders, can be a source of interesting ideas too. All right, so I've covered some of this already, but some of the worst drawdowns I had, that December 1999 was when I was still transitioning to fully mechanical. And that's when I realized that I'll get into the execution later, because I actually think my ability to automate and execute consistently is the #1 source of my long-term success, more so than the actual strategy types I've traded. But that is when I realized that entering at this close had better results than entering next open. And I used to automate that by basically running a data update and then a scan in Telechart 2000, and then pulling in that scan output into Excel, and then generating emails to my broker. And yeah, I talked about the Q1 of 2001 drawdown. Spring of 2005, I had a similar drawdown like that, but unlike the prior times, I couldn't find any version of the end of day entry strategies that still worked. So that's when I switched to scanning all day. When I was making that drawdown chart, I realized I had a 24% drawdown in 2008, but I don't even really remember noticing that or reacting to it in particular. I think we were all staring at CNBC trying to figure out if the world was going to end. And I ended up with a positive year anyway. Yeah, 2013 was when my the short side in particular started to fail, because that short setup I had always used and had done so well, especially in 2000, became the BTFD long strategy for so many people. And when I saw that, I realized that's part of what clued me into mean reversion. It's like, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. So that's when I did that. But then I had that particularly bad problem in 2015. And it was basically caused by 2 or 3 periods of just a couple of days each when a lot of large losses correlated. Now I was still using that fixed share position sizing, and it was kind of a perfect storm where the large losses also happened to be towards the upper end of my price range and made especially large moves. And they just kind of came in clusters. The other big difference I noticed when trading breakouts long short, the two sides tend to hedge each other. When the market starts to roll over, you get short entries while you're still holding some longs. So your overall equity curve can often just stay flat in those times. Whereas with mean reversion, if you're entering on sharp down moves for longs or sharp up moves for shorts, you usually have just one side overweighted at any given time. So in 2016, the main changes I made were I switched finally to fraction of account position sizing and got rid of using intraday leverage as I had been doing, because I had been using that mechanism of taking all the entries I could get with mean reversion intraday, and then at the close I would exit the most profitable ones and leave the rest to recover. It's kind of the opposite of the old thing they say of cut your losers short and let your winners run. I was doing the exact opposite, which actually, as many of you probably know, usually backtests better anyhow. But so yeah, basically says what I did. Okay, this is sort of similar to that other table. This is showing that the first mean reversion system that I had ever used, which is in 2014, actually very end of 2013. I think I deployed it in December. So I was still using the fixed share position sizing, same as I had been doing with the other strategies, and with a price range 10 to 80, very typical. Simple trend filter. I remember I liked these strategies because they seemed so much simpler and had fewer parameters, and they were based on market structure edge that you could clearly observe, and so on. So the main measure, I did use RSI2, but I didn't use an extreme value. I was just wanting it to be less than 30 for longs or greater than 70 for shorts. And then the main measure I used for the prior move was, as you all know, mean reversion strategy basically has 2 components. It's what was the prior move, and then what's the additional move today, the day you enter. So so for my prior move, I was using the same mechanism I had used with breakouts to determine that it wasn't overbought or oversold before my entry. But this time I reversed it. I wanted to know that it was oversold before I entered long, and know that it was overbought before I entered short. So I would so down 6% within 6 days. So that's basically like in AmiBroker HHV C, 6 times 0.94. So that was my indicator. Or for the short side, LLVC, 9 times 1.1. And then I thought I was quite clever for my setting my entry limit price of using the greater of 1.5 points, 1 ATR, or I think that's supposed to say 2.5%. I can't believe I would have done 2.75, but maybe I did. The other thing I did from the beginning, which is different from how some people trade mean reversion, is it really didn't bother me if I had more setups than I could enter, and that there would be some randomness as to which ones would get filled first. I had done so much studying of this market structural edge that I concluded that it didn't really matter which specific stocks you ended up in, and it was false precision and to assume that it really mattered for your actual trades to exactly match your backtest. So you end up with differences through short periods of time, but over sufficiently long time, it averages out so that the results come out quite similar either way. And the advantage of taking more entries by having more setups than you could take was good. And the reason that worked is because I had execution software that was monitoring live data and would just place orders for the ones as the prices were touched. Now the problem with that is it introduced a little bit of slippage because it's better to have your limit order there in advance, but that's how I was doing it. And it worked well enough. And so for exits on those first strategies, I was using a profit target of 8%, no stop, and a 3-day time stop. And then I was using that kill rank mechanism again. So I would sometimes go up to 150% per side intraday, but then trim it back to 100% right before the close. The other thing the reason it got constrained to 150% ish is because I had this max new per day parameter of 8. So, and now this is, I probably tweaked that a little bit, but in contrast, after I had the really big drawdown and restarted, how I made it more conservative is what you see in the right 2 columns. So now I raised the bottom end of the price range, and because now I'm using fractional position sizing. You can see near the bottom 10% of capital per position, and max open positions of 10. So I never went above 100% intraday or overnight. That was one of the ways I made it more conservative. Other than that, they were pretty. I also eliminated the biotech sector from my universe because it had given me a lot of trouble before, and I had a near miss of a couple of times of where if I had slightly different parameters, I might have gotten in a biotech short that would have been a huge loss. But other than that, pretty similar mechanism. I was still using the down X% within X days thing. I remember when I made a decision to not optimize those 2 numbers separately. So that's why the 6 and 6 and 18 and 18, I said, okay, they have to match. Pretty much, yeah, I guess the same entry limit price. So, and I've changed this since. I'm using a somewhat different approach now, but that's what I was using back then. These are my results versus the S&P since that 2016 reset. Got to a sort of slow start. Got ahead. Had a little pullback there in 2019, and by then I'd already added a couple other strategies. But I've done very well, especially since the second half of 2020, and continuing into this year, for which I am grateful. All right, now getting into back testing. How did my backtesting software evolve? So this is, I went through my archive folder on my computer and found quite a few of the older versions that were in my projects folders, and was able to produce some screenshots of them. This is the oldest one I could find. This was from 1998 when I was trading with a partner and we were using semi-discretionary entries and mechanical exits, and I wanted to be able to backtest the exits. And I guess also the position sizing to some extent. So it would read in a list of our actual trades from that trades.txt file, and it would read in some data which I was probably exporting from TC2000. And then it would just let me try different exit parameters or position sizing. And I guess it put the results there in that little box in the lower right. So I guess I did a little bit of optimizing with that. Oh, I see. All those check boxes. Yeah, I guess I would check the things I wanted to optimize and then click optimize. And I just kept working on this, and I think I'm a software developer at heart, so I just kept wanting to make the tool better. Got a little more, yeah. In this version, right, this is where I had started to try and codify the entries rather than using the list of existing trades. I was trying to. I basically had the system in the C code and the parameters here in this dialog box for the model, like what kind of a day high does it have to be, how much congestion, how much 1 day gain. It's the same kind of parameters that you saw in my year 2000 strategy earlier. So I'm testing them here in a hard-coded way. Same kind of thing. And then I realized, oh, I could write my own parser for TC2000 PCF syntax and make the tool much more general. So those big text fields are where you could type in any TC2000 formula for your entry conditions and your target and stop formulas, and then test it that way. So I started doing it that way. That then expanded to this, which I think it's the first time I called it real test. And yeah, it was showing the results there in the upper right-hand corner. And as I recall, it was also writing a much more detailed log out to Notepad. And you can see some of the TC2000 entry formulas there. Same kind of thing. And then it evolved to this kind of a user interface where the formula needed more space to type because they started to get more elaborate. And so, yeah, you would have to click on one of the folder tabs and then one of the buttons on the left to get to each formula within a system. And I introduced the idea of a results list where every time you run a test, it would add a new row to the results, and you could go back and compare them and see what their parameters had been. So there are many different versions of this. And then in 2016, when I wasn't sure what to do next with my life, and I thought, well, why don't I finally really gut this software and overhaul it and turn it into something much better. Get away from Word to PCF syntax, which is quite limited, and put in a fully formula expression language and a good editor. And by then I had actually been using AmiBroker a lot, and so I took some ideas from that. Like I know that they use the Scintilla editor, which was open source. So I thought, oh, why don't I use that too? That's what real test looks like now, more or less. You can see that top window, the results window, is still similar idea to what was in the old version, although it works a little better. All right, and then I put in a couple of slides about to show AmiBroker to real test translation. And I'm going to show some of this when I demonstrate as well. But this is probably a lot more than you want to absorb while you're sitting there listening to me talk. But it just shows some of the parallels. The main difference is that the real test has a lot more things you can specify about a system like max positions, max setups, max entries, setup score, entry score, so on. And each of them is just can be any formula in the script. And by finding the right combination of those, you can pretty much express almost any idea. And I'll show later some examples of how the same idea can be scripted in each. So if you want to study this in more detail, you can watch the rerun of this presentation and pause on this slide. All right, now this is, before I do that, I want to switch gears here. Where's my browser window? Oh, I had a browser window running. Hold on. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Okay, so this is a strategy that Nick Raj, who I think presented to you folks about a year ago, discloses on this blog post, which is day trading strategy. Pretty simple rules. Many of you have probably seen this before. So all right, so this was, I took that logic in that article and coded it as best as I could in AmiBroker. It required using CBT, and I got pretty similar results to what his were, not exactly the same. As is often the case when you try to do something from an article or a book, there's probably something slightly, some subtlety that they forgot to put in. But the results were pretty close. I'll have to ask Nick what I got wrong sometime. But that's how the exact same strategy looks in real test. You just define the indicators you want, and then you have a strategy that's long, that's your position size, commission formula, entry setup condition. In RUI means it's currently a constituent of the Russell 1000 index. Max setups of 40, ranked by that. Here's your limit price and your exit rule. So reasons to keep using AmiBroker, even if you are interested in real test charting. I'm never going to have as nice charts as AmiBroker does. It began life as a charting program, and I don't have chart drawings and so on. I have some charts, but they're mostly for being able to study the trades that are in a back test. I don't have a full programming language in real test. You can't write a loop. So, yeah, and I don't have a way to plug in an external DLL. So if you have very complicated indicators and that's important to you, that would be a great reason to keep using AmiBroker. Real test currently does not support connection to a live data source for any kind of live charting or scanning, which you can do nicely in AmiBroker. I don't support intraday bar sizes at the moment, though I may in the future. And I don't have like GUI customization or features like that. But yeah, and of course you've developed a lot with AmiBroker and you already own it. So there's certainly no reason to stop using AmiBroker, even if you take an interest in real test. Reasons to possibly try real test. If you struggle with AmiBroker at times, you might find real test is more approachable and simpler to use. Most tests and scans run significantly faster in real test than in AmiBroker. and research workflow often feels more natural and productive. People tell me this. I mean, I found it as well. I wouldn't have done this major overhaul if I felt like I could have done the work I needed to in AmiBroker. But since I already had a lot of the code in place, I decided to do it. Combination of multiple strategies into a single system is of course a big one, which Realtest makes very easy, which I'll show you in a moment. Also, the ability of tests to refer to their own statistics as they run can be useful. Realtest makes it quite easy to run a test based on an existing list of trades, which is funny because that's what its origin was, as you saw. I use that mainly to compare my backtest results to my live results, but there are a couple of people using Realtest now who are discretionary traders, and they use it to study their discretionary trades. Because you can pull in a list of trades, run it as a backtest to see its stats, and then you can start adding rules on top of it to make it semi-mechanical. So that can be interesting. There's a mechanism that makes it easy to generate order lists, which I'll show you. And I try to provide excellent and friendly help via email in a non-hostile forum. So that's the presentation.
Sorry, Marsten, I just had to interject there. I found the last point hilarious about the non-hostile forum.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different members that, that have said, I'm afraid to post in the forum on AmiBroker because, I don't want to get yelled at.
Well, the funny thing is I've observed quite a few people who have used both seem to be a little bit afraid to post in my forum, and I'm trying to encourage them that it's really okay.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never been yelled at, even when, I was just learning and asked a lot of stupid questions. But some people, somehow they just, they catch the ire of certain people in the forum and they just get yelled at. And I agree. That's not a great way to encourage, people to excel and to move forward. So I just thought that was hilarious when I was reading it. So thanks for that.
No, sure.
Okay. I'll just turn off my mic now.
Now I need to, all right, pull up my little list here so I can remember what I was going to do. Okay, so now I'm going to pull up Realtest and go back to screen sharing. There you are. There you are. All right. All right, can everyone see Realtest okay there? So first thing I'm going to show you is, this is actually the set of example scripts that is included in Realtest. And I'm just going to show you a few of them. The first one, in programming, we often, like, if you're learning a new language, you start by learning how to write hello world to the screen. And I think in backtesting, the equivalent of hello world is a 5200 moving average crossover on SPY. So this is my very first tutorial, how to make a 5200 crossover on SPY with Yahoo data. So this is the script, and first you press import to get the data. Now you have the data. If you want, you can see a chart showing that you have the data. And then the test settings, the test settings section of a script, it's optional. It's sort of like the set parameter in AmiBroker. You can go into the dialog box and set everything, but you really, in the end, you want your script to include, to enforce what settings it needs. But this panel along the top here has all the same settings, so you can just do it there if you want to use the GUI approach. But I have them here, which is basically to go to use the full range of data from this data file that I just created. And in a strategy, if you go and press F2, these are all the strategy elements I could add. And if you leave any out, it's just using the defaults. So if you leave out quantity, the default is your whole account. That's and because this data file only includes one symbol, we don't need anything like max positions or max invested or whatever. It's either in SPY or it's not in SPY. So it's kind of the simplest possible strategy in real test. And that's the back test, and that's the equity curve, drawdowns, and those are the trades that it made. And go and see them on charts. Might be clearer if we add the line. There we go. Now you can see when you're going through trades, it automatically lines them up so it's really easy to see each trade on the chart. So this is something that is important to me when researching a strategy. Is I want to be able to easily look at a good sample of trades and make sure it's doing what I think it's doing. So that's the first sample. And one of the other tutorials I have is the little simple rotational system based on the standard sector ETFs. So we're going to run that import. I just pressed F7, which is the same as clicking on the import button. And now run the test. And this shows I have a special kind of strategy called a benchmark, which works the same way, but it doesn't influence the overall results. But so those are useful. They have a couple different uses. One is certainly to plot a benchmark curve. So here you see that doing my default parameters on a rotation of sector ETFs is no better than buy and hold SPY. In fact, it's probably a little worse. Those are the drawdowns. Now this I included also to show, so we can run the optimizer. So we have three parameters here. I have the look back length, the number of positions to rotate, and this third one is interesting. So this is the kind of thing I like to do. I did a momentum-based rotation, but I said, well, why limit it to that? Why don't we reverse it and do anti-momentum? So if Momo is 0, it's basically turning it into a mean reversion strategy. So we will go and run these 50 tests. And now I want to show you something about the results window. If we do edit column formulas, or F9. So each column here in the results window is based on one of these formulas, which in turn is based on these stats primitives that I have, like s.equity. Each of these is basically a series or an array of daily stat for each day. So I'm just going in here. I'm going to uncomment this because I realized I want the MAR column added. Press F4. Okay, now we have an MAR column here. All right, so if we sort by MAR, the one with the very best. So that's a way where rotating sector ETFs actually outperforms SPY pretty nicely. Now, what I found interesting when sorting by MAR descending, and you look at this last column, which is the Momo parameter, it's all zeros at the top. So sure enough, if you want to do sector ETF rotation, mean reversion actually might be a better approach than momentum. So now there's actually this example actually originated on my forum. I wasn't aware of this article from Allocate Smartly, and someone asked, how would you test that in real test? And this person actually scripted it, and then I helped him improve the script. But it's a way of timing whether to be in an offensive asset, which doesn't mean one that offends you, but it's the opposite of defensive, and a versus a defensive one. So it's just those 7 ETFs are the whole universe for this strategy. And so we can do the import. So Realtest is a little different in terms of data architecture. In AmiBroker, you're used to kind of plugging in the Norgate database, and then all the data is there. Realtest, I'll show you shortly, also has a very nice interface with Norgate. But what you do is you maintain any number of different data files called RTD, which is they're actually the same binary format that the data is in memory in Realtest. So once you create one, it's extremely fast to reload. They're really analogous to all the different watch lists that you might select as filters in AmiBroker. But especially for a longer, like a longer term one that goes back 20 years and includes all the delisted symbols, it might take 2 or 3 minutes to import that whole thing. So I might only do that once a week or so. But whereas the import of the current symbols for my daily trading, it only takes a few seconds. So anyhow, let's see, I did that. So now let's run this. Now this shows the data section. I have this ability to do cross-sectional or breadth calculations, which is sort of like, what's that thing called in AmiBroker? I can't remember the name of it now. There's a way to do it, but it's I'm gonna have it here. Add to composite. That's what it is, right? It's like doing add to composite and then using foreign to refer to it. But in Realtest, it's pretty straightforward. And I'll show you. So we're counting how many are in list 1 means it's in the first include list. So how many symbols are in that universe? And then we're saying how many are in that universe and have a positive momentum factor. And then the setup rule is if all of them have a positive momentum factor, so if none of them are negative, then we take the best one from that list. Otherwise, we take the best one from the other list. So that's the setup rule, yeah, right there. If the number that are above 0 is the same as the number that exists in total, then our setup rule is that it's from the first list. Otherwise, our setup rule is that it's from the second list. And then whichever list it's from, we're going to rank it by the factor. So that gives us the position rank. So then in the actual strategy, max positions is pause, which is 1. And the entry setup condition is that thing. And then the entry score, which determines which one, how they're sorted for entry, is this pause rank. And the exit rule is if it's no longer in the top rank. So that's just a typical rotational. Realtest doesn't have a rotational mode like AmiBroker does. It's just another strategy, but you use rotational logic in your entry setup and exit rule. But anyway, this thing has pretty good stats, actually. 14% rate of return. I should explain. I generally prefer to not use compounding when I do back testing. So I have this thing called rate of return. In this case, it is CAR. And you can see I define it here. I calculate CAR and average annual return. And if the test was run with compounding, I use CAR, and otherwise I use average annual return. So the ROR stat is always appropriate to whether or not compounding was used, as is the max drawdown. The max drawdown, if it's not compounded, is calculated based on the fixed daily capital as opposed to the peak equity. But that's just a detail. But anyway, so yeah, that's how that strategy looks versus buy and hold. So it looks pretty good. Drawdowns look like that. SPY. Yeah, you have to hide the other one. Have to hide SPY to even see it. So that's something. One of the demos. Now another one of the demo scripts. Now we'll get into Norgate. This is a kind of a classic NASDAQ 100 rotation strategy. For my example, I decided to literally use the same momentum factor that Investors Business Daily uses to calculate relative strength rankings. Figured why not. So here, this shows how Real Test works with Norgate. You say Norgate is your data source, and here, just type a dot. You see all your Norgate dynamic watch lists. So here we're using one of their standard ones, which is NASDAQ 100 current and past, and we're also including SPY. I maintain an exclude list mostly because it's for these redundant symbols, because I don't want to buy both Goog and Google and so on. And then the start date, end date, and what to save it as. So I'll show you now. Yeah, I've got Norgate running, so this will run very fast because it only has to import 402 symbols there. That's done. Back to 2004. And now we can run the strategy. It's calculating the data and it's done. So that's that NASDAQ rotation strategy. This is an aggressive strategy. I mean, this model's trading it with 100% of your account. I don't think I know very many people who would put 100% of their tradable capital into a NASDAQ 100 rotational strategy. It takes a strong stomach to hold through some of those drawdowns, but it can be good for part of your capital. And in fact, I'll show an example. I built an example. Now we get into combining strategies, which includes the same one that you just saw, but here it's allocating 30% of your combined account. Most of these examples and how I trade myself models running a lot of different strategies in the same account. So if one has a really good run, the others will increase their position sizes because they each benefit from each other's success and compensate for the other's failures. That to me makes sense as opposed to segregating them or only rebalancing monthly or something like that. I literally rebalance my strategies in real time. Because every entry calculates based on the current balance that Interactive Brokers tells me I have. So what I did here is I just kind of came up with, I was trying to just find simple concepts that I don't even know if I necessarily use them in real life, but that fit together well and are kind of different. So I have this asset class thing. What did I do for that? It's sort of, oh yeah, stocks, bonds. Okay, so it's a 3 ETF rotation, SPY, gold, or TLT. I should really put in that VAA into this because it would probably do better, but that's that one. And that one has 30% allocated to it. And then I came up with a weekly pullback of Dow components idea. Basically a weekly mean reversion, which also gets 30%. NDX momentum gets 30%. So now we're up to 90. And then I put in long short VXX, which is using, that one was slightly more complicated to implement because VXX actually has two different symbols. the one before January 2019 and the one after. So that's a special variable that's used so that you can tell whether the current symbol is VXX. And then it's just using these things. I think everybody knows this idea that if the 3 month out VIX, if the VIX is higher than the 3 months out VIX, you go long VXX, otherwise you go short. It's been a pretty reasonable strategy. Okay, so let's import that data file. I think I already imported all these before I signed on, but I'll just do it again anyhow. And run the test. So that comes pretty decent results, 25% rate of return, 13% max drawdown. So this starts to show how you can combine strategies and see the different individual ones. And if you want, you can just go look at the individual lines. See how they combine. See sometimes you might want to turn off the combined drawdown so you can see how the drawdowns tend to not happen at the same times. That's what you want. Now I also have an ability to run a report which ends up generating HTML. So I'm going to have to switch to a different screen here to show it, but it ends up looking like that. So you can see all the stats of each strategy, the monthly table. This is pretty useful, strategy correlation matrix. It ends up basically all this information you can pretty much get by drilling down into the results details, but this puts it all in one place, trade plots, Monte Carlos and all this kind of stuff. Let's go back to real test. Okay. Yeah, the trade plots, and you can get to that way. See what for different strategies are all of them combined, and you can see all these sorts of things. Monte Carlo stuff. This gets into a whole where you can group trades into bins and sort them by any formula, but I think that's probably beyond the scope of this demo at this point in time. Let's see, next on my list. Okay, now this is where I showed this script in the slideshow, which is the Nick day trade strategy. So I'll just run it. I've already run this import earlier, so I'll just run the strategy now. Calculates, runs. It gives you an idea for the speed. Now that strategy, yeah, it hit. It's funny, that article was written, I think, right around here. And it did actually have a pretty big drawdown in March 2020, but it's been doing very well recently. Prior to that, it hadn't had anything much beyond a 15% drawdown. It's definitely a nice strategy that's worth looking at. And I think he actually sells some source code versions of them too, so that's another way to get it. Now I'm going to get into, I don't know why I closed that, doesn't matter. My mean reversion sample, I have a whole family of mean reversion sample scripts here, which is, it's the same script with different variations. But the basic one is a long short mean reversion strategy, which is similar to the ones I use. And because I have all these scripts that share common elements, I put them in a common script using the include statement to include it, which includes my import statement for it uses the Russell 3000 universe, the data elements, and parameters that can be optimized. and then the template, this is a way that if you have a bunch of statements that you want to include in multiple strategies, you can put them in a template, and then you see each of these just says using base, which really just means copy all those lines into here, but it avoids having to copy and paste yourself or retype things. It keeps the script code cleaner. So the strategy is basically looking for the setup. It's looking for a move beyond the EMA 5. EMA 5 minus some percentage for the long setup, or the EMA 5 plus some percent for the short setup. And then it's, let's see, and I guess the percent default was 2.5. So it's basically like, it's sort of like a Bollinger Band or Keltner Band, but it's just constructed with percentage rather than with ATRs or with standard deviations. And then, so it's looking for it to get to that upper band and then make for short, or get to that lower band for a long, and then make yet another move. So it's pretty straightforward. The limit is the close minus half an ATR for a long, or the close plus half an ATR for a short. Then the universe, it has to be in the Russell 1000 liquid. So that's liquid. And volatile is at least a 3% ATR. I'm excluding biotech, and should be in an uptrend. Now, that's true for both longs and shorts. It's, some of you might have seen if you've read the chapter in Market Wizards. I found that short mean reversion also works better when the stock's in an uptrend. So this, now I'm going to change the end date here to end of 2020 for a reason that'll become clear in a minute, and run this test. So this is running two strategies for over 10 years for the whole Russell 3000 historical universe, which is like 10,000 stocks. So that's the result of that. I like to see this sort of thing where the long side and the short side do a little dance and are pretty well in parallel. We have a little prelude of things to come here. You can see the short side is already starting to look a little bad at the end of December. I should have made the end date earlier. And some of you will already know what's coming. So now let's change this back to latest and run it again. And now we have to say, watch out below. Whoops. Yeah, so that's, I thought it was just Reddit Wall Street Bets, but I now think it could have been Bill Huang as well, doing some of that short squeeze activity in December and January. And then we have GameStop in there. If we go look at the trades and sort by percent gain, we have, oh, that one was a, so that was bad. I seriously hope nobody experienced that in real life. Fortunately, which is kind of just dumb luck, I didn't happen to have that in my own version of this strategy, for which I'm grateful. And maybe I wouldn't have held. Let's hope so. But that raises an interesting question. I mean, that was probably a one-time anomaly, and the strategy seems basically fine other than that. But so one thing you can do, and then this shows an element of real test, is entry skip. Symbol is GME. All right, let's see how that does. I should have just changed the start date. No point in running it all the way back from 2010 again, but it doesn't take very long. All right, well, that's getting a little better. but we still had a 41% drawdown. It just was a very bad, this is a great mean reversion short strategy that worked for a decade and then suddenly got clobbered at the end of 2020 and January 2021. I personally didn't experience a terrible drawdown during that time, although my short strategy, my mean reversion short strategies, I have two of them, were both in their worst drawdowns, but because of a number of factors, I avoided most of this trouble and had a good results over that period overall. Some of my other strategies did very well to compensate.
Marsten,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was thinking that maybe we could just take a couple of quick questions right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because I know when, you're
here.
familiar with software, it's it's really easy to click around. But I'm just itching to ask you a couple of questions myself.
Yeah, let me just, I'm almost I'm at the next to last thing here. So I'm just going to show
no worries.
One more thing, and then it will be actually question time. And
okay, let's do that.
Is the version of the strategy that is, here's another version of the same strategy. So rather than just saying, oh, let's skip GME, which is a little artificial, what if you had been running the strategy and using its own equity curve as a moving average? So here is the same thing. No, that's not it. This is it. Here's the same thing where the two strategies from the original one became benchmarks, and then the actual strategy just uses the benchmark code and then adds the equity curve filter. So let's see how that looks. And it's running a little slower because now it has to do 4 strategies. Right. So that hack, as it happens, would have saved you pretty well. It's the long side does you don't give up too much for using the tracking logic, and you can see that it shaves off most of the drawdowns. The short side. You gave up more, and I've looked at this over the years and thought, I don't like to give up that much return. I probably won't use this. So I actually wasn't using this technique at the time. But if someone had been using this technique, as it happens, it would have kept you out of that particular drawdown. Anyway, that was the last item that I wanted to show. Last thing on my list. So I will now open it for questions.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm just going to jump in here. That was super interesting. Now I'm dying to ask you a couple of questions. So I don't see too much coming through. So I'm just going to kind of jump on the questions first. This is really, the certain aspects of your software are very impressive. I can tell you just from my experience working with AmiBroker, I like the ability to use multi-strategies and combine multiple strategies. I like your, I'm not huge on charting either. I just like to use it to, validate my trades and to look at what the actual trades look like. And I like the way you've incorporated the tracking, and being able to just flip through the trades and track them on the chart, from start to finish very nicely. I know that's something TradeStation does a pretty good job of, and it seems like you've incorporated kind of all those best aspects. So for that, I commend you. I think it's awesome.
Similarly, with results, you can flip through the equity curves of all the tests you've run.
That is cool.
Which I do frequently.
So speaking of multiple strategies, so let's assume that you've never combined strategies before and you've got like 20 strategies in your software, individual strategies. If I want to, now let's say I have like a roster of 20 strategies that work okay. And all of a sudden I say to myself one day, well, what would happen if I combined strategy 1 and 5 and 10 and 15? Do you have to write, write all of those rules out? Like what's the easiest way to combine individual strategies using your software just for testing purposes?
There's a couple different ways. I mean, certainly putting all the rules in one script is the most flexible way. And
Okay.
actually, the one I have the most like that, there's a book by Lawrence Bensdorf
Yep, I've
called
read it.
Automated Stock Trading Systems. And I actually implemented all 7 strategies that he has in the book. And this will give you a feel for how that looks. He seemed to have gone out of his way to use slightly different indicators in each one. So I start out with this huge pile of indicators. And they're all here just because Realtest calculates these things a lot faster if you do them in the data section. It's calculated before the backtest runs, and it uses multiple threads and other optimizations. Um, like for example, a moving average, it will calculate the whole thing in one pass rather than having to loop back 150 bars for every bar, and so on. Same with all the exponential type things. So anyhow, so that's there, right? And then I couldn't put too much in a common template, really just position sizing stuff. And then here's all his strategies.
So
And he was actually delighted that I did this, and he bought a copy of Realtest, and it has some posts in my forum also.
yeah, I think because he was using trading blocks or something before, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think he's recently hired a programmer and is building his own thing, or has built his own thing. So I don't think he's probably actively using Realtest, but he was interested enough to try it anyway.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, just the a cost of the seat of your software would be worth it just to acquire those strategies already built. I know that from experience. So for anyone out there that's kind of on the fence, you might, obviously I'm not making anything from this. I'm pretty certain I'm going to do a 1 month trial of your software, and then, obviously if I like it, I'm going to spend the 400 or so that it costs to buy it. I mean, it's, for me, this is an inexpensive tool for what it offers. And
Well,
I
thank you.
like the ability, some of the abilities that it has. So I just wanted to wait to actually see it in person before I made the decision to, run an actual, the 1 month trial, which I think is enough to figure out if you like it or not, and then go from there. And I've been trying to figure out how to program Python as well. So I'm trying to do one project at a time so my brain doesn't explode. But just getting back to my question, so the
So,
best way to do it is to add to develop all those strategies as one strategy, and not to just like combine them, or can you just template them, or can you just
well,
copy the rules over? Like, what's the best way to do
yeah,
it?
I mean, you like I did in I guess I closed that window already. In this, yeah, I mean, here there's not very much common elements. I mean, you can end up, if you have enough elements that are common, you can put it in the template. And I also have a thing called library, which isn't used here, but that's kind of like for formula snippets. So
Okay.
even if the whole strategy element isn't common, but if you find yourself using the same formula snippet, you can just refer to it that way.
Yeah. I'd be
So
more
you can
concerned
structure
about.
things like that, but it is a fair amount of work to get it all, uh, to get them all in there and to have the data items that they need and so on. I mean, another way you can approach it, though, which some people have done, especially if you already have strategies implemented in AmiBroker, this script shows us. I have a mechanism. You can define a strategy as based on a trade list, which is actually just like a CSV file, um, which looks like that. You know, strategy side, data and quantity and price in and so on. You can have multiple strategies trades in one file. And actually this also supports transaction list, like you get from running Interactive Brokers Flex query on your account. So you can pull that in and backtest that. And it also directly supports AmiBroker trade list. So you can actually run a strategy in AmiBroker, save the trade list to CSV, and then point this to that CSV file and run it. And so that's one way. That's probably the easiest way to combine strategies where you already have them coded in something else.
Okay, my
Um,
my my concern is, like, let's say if I want to keep individual strategies individual, and I have 20 strategies in real test, and I don't want to have the the potential problem of having different versions, and I don't want to have separate references. I just want to use those exact strategies. Let's say I have strategy 1 to 20, but I want to see what the results of them combined would be. Do I just basically have to copy them into into one
Um, you could,
combination
I mean,
strategy?
if that's something you want to do frequently, you could structure it so that each one was in a separate script, and then your sort of master script has had a bunch of include statements.
I see.
You would have to be careful that, I mean, when you include another script in a script in real test, it really just ends up like MR sample, for example. If I do show original test script, you'll see the included script, it ends up as part of the script really internally. So in other words, you wouldn't be able to reuse the same variable names between two strategies or things like that because they would clash in the included version.
And if I changed, let's say, my master, strategy 1, would it be updated and reflected in that when it's included? Does that like update?
No, it's not. It doesn't have that kind of
So it just takes a
intelligence.
snapshot at the time that it's imported then. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, a script is just a text file. So
Right.
Realtest doesn't know anything about it other than what is literally written there in the text file. Um, there's not like an underlying database or anything like that. It literally takes the script file and parses it and does what it says.
Okay.
Kind of like a source code in a programming language.
Okay. So if that
So
program,
yeah, you would have to really manage that. I mean, the other thing you can do, I mean, if you do the work once to put them all in the same script, it's very easy to. All I have to do now is press Control/. So you can comment out all the ones you don't want to run,
I see.
and
And
then just comment them in one at a time to run them.
Okay, that's easy enough. And can I just copy entire strategies into new strategies? Like, can I copy all of those fields easily into another strategy, or is
Yeah,
that
this is just text. So
okay?
yeah, this is just a text file. You could edit this in any editor. I mean, this editor is preferable because it it tells you what to do as you start to type. But
Mhm.
it's just a text editor.
So I could
So
copy that whole thing and just dump it into a new combined
right,
strategy as well. Okay, that's easy enough.
right. So yeah, people often will start, and in fact, I have a multi-file search. So right, like if you wanted to know, oh, I know there's something in there that has to do with the NDX. What is it? Oh, okay. All of these things have to do. So you can find the example that like this, and then you could just copy and paste those statements as you need. Um,
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so let's see. Okay, that I think that answers my question. I appreciate that. Let's see. So I had a question about the kill rank. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about what the kill rank was again?
sure. That the concept there was, so you have a trade. Take a mean reversion system, for example, like the one I was showing earlier, this MR sample thing. Where you have a certain number of entries. Like the way I do them now, let's say I'm putting 10% of my portfolio in each position, and I might say I only want 5 new ones per day, or I only want 10 new ones per day, so I never go 100%. But what I used to do is let it go over 100% intraday. So like I might come in, if it's a multi-day system, I might come into today with 5 open positions, and have 10 new setups that hit their limits, and I would take them all. So I would be 150% invested, and then when the close came around, or just before the close, my automation software would rank all of my positions by current open profit, and it would one by one exit them in most profitable to least profitable order until the exposure got down below 100% again,
I see.
and
So
then
you're
and then it
basically
would leave the
maxing out.
rest open.
I see.
So
So you're basically maxing out your your intraday margin and you were just resetting it to
Yeah, I
overnight
never got
margin.
to the point of hitting, of maxing out the margin, but I was letting it go well over 100%.
Right. And then you would just reset it so that you weren't margined overnight.
Yeah, but it turned out to be also, in backtesting, that turned out to be a profitable exit logic. Is the idea of rather than waiting for some fixed exit rule like a certain target or a certain stop,
Right.
you just you let the number of new positions that you get dictate the number of exits. So it's kind of doing a dynamic turnover.
Very cool.
It's almost like a daily rotation strategy, you might say, that that allows intraday margin.
Right. Very cool.
So yeah, I mean it's cool, but it's yeah, you have to think carefully before using intraday exposure like that.
Absolutely. Now, just kind of tying into the drawdowns, can you kind of speak a little bit to how you might use an equity curve, the moving average of your equity curve, and reference that in terms of like maybe shutting a system off, or using that as like a risk mitigation
Yeah,
kind of mechanism?
I have a couple different versions of that. Right. So the first one that I already showed, this is kind of the simplest, where it would just be an on-off switch. So the way this works is this, like, let's look at the long side. So here we have, this is the exact same code as this, except for the word strategy has been changed to benchmark, which means run it in the back test, but don't include it in the stats, basically.
Okay.
Don't include it in the combined results.
Right.
So that turns out to be a very useful device, because you can, you can make tracking strategies for all kinds of purposes. Like, for example, I implemented the original Turtle system with futures,
Cool.
and which is
Is it worth trading
surprisingly,
again after all these years?
I don't think so. It's a surprisingly complicated system,
Right.
because they had this rule in the 20-day breakout version, where you weren't allowed to take an entry if the last trade was a winner.
Right.
So that's a case where in that I used, um, yeah, the tracking strategy here. These are just so you can keep track of whether the last trade was a winner or not. Because within a strategy itself, it's like a catch-22 if you try to say don't enter if the last trade was a winner, because then you end up never entering again.
Right.
So you need a separate strategy to track that.
So
So
you can
anyway,
have the
so
same
here,
strategy be a benchmark. Is that what you're saying
yeah.
as well?
So
Okay.
here's the same strategy, and then rather than copying and pasting all its code again, I have this using statement where, so it's basically like including the code of another strategy in your strategy.
Mhm.
So I'm saying using means just include all of this, and this in
Okay.
turn is already using something else, which is the base, which is in another file. Um, but that gives you, it starts to give you a feel too of how you could organize multiple strategies. So the actual MR long strategy is identical to the benchmark, except for this one extra statement, which is skip entries. Entry skip is a condition. If extern is like how you refer. It's sort of like foreign in AmiBroker, but it's not just for stocks. Like if it's a dollar sign, it's a stock. If it's an at sign, it's a strategy.
Okay.
And if it's a tilde, it's a time frame. So that's how you can refer to other size bars also. So it's extern, it's like a powerful general purpose thing. So it's extern something, any expression. So here, and now you have all these things. These are all the stats. And this is a different, with AmiBroker, it runs the backtest and then it calculates all the stats.
Hmm.
And you can write a CBT to manipulate them if you need to, but real test is doing everything at the same time. So the stats are being calculated in real time. And so a strategy can refer to its own stats anytime in any of its formulas, its own stats so far.
Wow, that's very powerful. So you can use any
So
stat, not only the equity curve, you can use any stat.
all those things are there. And so here it's saying, look at the MR long tracking strategy and compare its equity level to the 50-day average. You can use average or MA interchangeably. And so we're going to skip every entry as long as the tracking strategy's equity is below its 50-day average. So that's what that one does. Now you can also, oh yeah, this was the other version. To get a little more sophisticated, rather than just binary on off, this version does, what does this one do? Oh yeah, I changed the allocation. So if the drawdown, if the tracking strategy is in more than a 5% drawdown, I reduce the allocation to 50% instead of 100%. So that was another thing I played with. So yeah, you can play with any number of different things and run optimizations on them or do whatever you want with it in terms of using your own strategy stats.
That is very cool, Marsten. Very cool.
To tell the truth, I don't actually use any of that in my own trading right now, but it's nice to know it's there if I want to test it.
I could spend a month going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. Okay, now I know like especially one of our power members, Larry P, loves explorations in AmiBroker. Can you kind of give us a quick overview of what the exploration sort of
Oh, sure.
looks
I'll
like
show
in
you
this
a good
software?
example. Some of you, I don't know if some of you know, but this is, let me share a different screen here. Where's my browser? Sorry. Anyway, all right, I won't go there. There's a fairly complex, hold on, let me see if I can go here. Just a sec. Go there. Okay. So this is part of the Stockbee website, and he has this complex set of breadth indicators called the Market Monitor that's updated every day from TC 2000 data. All right. So rather than having to update that manually like he does, we can have a script actually for it. It's one of my sample scripts. There it is. Okay. So this actually calculates all of those market breadth indicators. Actually, for comparison, I can show you. Hold on. There it is. I actually coded this in AFL a long time ago as well. So I calculate all those things and then do all these add to composites. And this is, I don't even have an exploration in the script. It just lets you select which one you want for plotting. But for real test, where'd you go? There you are. Sorry, I have too many windows. Yeah, so here's the same thing in real test. So it's a lot more compact. I mean, that's the whole thing you need. I think I already ran that import. So let's run this now. So I call what AmiBroker calls an exploration, I call a scan. I've never understood what a scan is in AmiBroker as opposed to an exploration, but it's basically the same kind of thing. You have a scan settings, which is just from what's in this GUI, and it says what date range to use and what data file to use, and then filter and which columns to add. And these can also be text, and I have some string functions and so on. So you can, the output is as flexible as you want. But what this is doing, this is calculating all of these things. That AmiBroker script takes a good 5 minutes to run with all those add to composites and everything. And so here we have this pretty much the same data that you saw on the Stockbee site. So that's one example of an exploration. Another one I
all the
have,
color highlighting and things like that.
no, I don't have, but you can go copy to clipboard and paste to Excel and then do whatever you want in there if you need that.
Okay.
I don't have that. now a more typical kind of scan would be, to find, let's say, a list of stocks. I mean, so for example, let's go look at my actual. All right, let's run this. These were my actual. I ran an update. Oh, but I haven't run the import yet. All right, so those are my trading candidates for today. And I'll typically in the morning run my scan and then sort by change, so I can just go and look at a few. And as with trade lists, you can just go through them on charts pretty easily like that. See what I'm getting into, and so on. So that's kind of another use of it. One other example I have is this one, right? So this actually, I think I have that data file. Did I already import that? Let's see. All right, yeah, that actually calculates the IBD relative strength rankings. So that for whatever universe. In this case, I'm doing it for the S&P 500. So that's one of my example scripts too. So if you want to calculate IBD relative strength rankings, that's how you do that.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's what I have in terms of. Actually, I have another cool example for real test. Yeah, no. So I sell real test through FastSpring, and the rep there told me that it's important to, like, they'll do the currency conversions for you for people buying it from other countries, but they'll charge a fee for it. So it's better to do it yourself. So when I try to remember to do this at least once a week. So I run this import, and then I run this scan. Okay, and those are all the prices in the same order that the FastSpring table I have to fill out is. So I just enter those in.
Oh, cool.
So
you don't even need Excel anymore.
No, completely different use of an exam, but it shows some of the flexibility that's there, and it's similar to explorations in AmiBroker.
Very cool. Okay, and so I understand as well, you can output your trading list to to a CSV file for your trading opportunities and things.
Oh yes, that's what I knew there was something I meant to show with the Nick thing. Let me just close all those things and reopen the Nick day trade. Yeah, okay. I did mean to show this. All right, and let's just change the start date to 2020. No point in going all the way back every time. Okay, so the first option, you just turn on orders and run the test, and it'll tell you tomorrow's orders in English.
Oh, cool.
So that's one way. Alternatively, and you can also turn on that option in the script, so you can have the script that you always run. I support this order template. I provide two by default, one for IB basket trader format. Yeah, in fact, let's do that.
Is it easy to modify those templates?
Oh yeah, it's just a text file with 2 lines. It looks like this. Yeah, that's the one. It basically just has what columns you want the CSV to be and what data you want in the columns, which can some of them are things from the strategy and some of them are literals depending on whether you use the keywords or not.
That seems easy enough. So that's your template right there.
Yeah, that's the template. And so now if I run this test, so that could literally be read into IB basket trader, and it includes the exit, the child exit order for each entry order, because this is a MOC order strategy.
Very cool.
And then, right, the Nick Chartist API is similar but slightly different format. And now I just add, because I know a lot of you people use Alira, I just added this, which it might need some fine tuning, but I tested it briefly and I think it works.
Great.
So that's an Alira signal file.
Great. I use Alera obviously, so for me that would be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's ideally rather than saying a number of shares, it would use like this thing uses a 10% fraction, but that's a refinement I would have to figure out how to
Yeah.
make, because
Or we
right
could even
now.
turn that off because Alera usually handles the position sizing.
Oh, okay. So I think that would be fairly flexible. So I couldn't make, because I mean, I noticed Alira supports CSV input as well, but I couldn't quite get my template mechanism to work for it. So I just decided to add it as a keyword and generate the text format, which seems much more straightforward.
Awesome. Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that offline. That would be cool because I know
Mhm.
I'm gonna want to generate some output for some strategies if I start using this for sure. Okay,
Mhm.
that's very cool. That's really great to know. So you can output that to different programs that can accept it with either Alera Portfolio Manager or the IB Basket Trader or Nick Raj's API. I know you love that word API.
Ah, right. Yes. Anyway,
Okay,
yeah,
so
you basically right. I'll probably change this. What it does now is it actually writes them all to a folder in Realtest called orders. And if we look for star.star, we'll actually see them in there. So, but yeah, basically it's like the strategy name, the date. So to use this right now, if I made no further changes, you'd have to then move those files to the folders where you need them.
right.
But that's how it works at the moment. I will probably, I have some other, like for example, I have a save scan as, where you can, for a scan, you can say the exact directory and file where you want it to end up, so you can batch it. Same with the trade list. So I just need to do the same thing for an order list.
Yeah, that would be useful for Alera because Alera uses specific strategy folders that
I
are
noticed
assigned by
that.
the strategy,
Right.
which keeps things kind of compartmentalized. But this I think this is really important because as you mentioned earlier in your presentation, that you thought that one of the reasons why you did so well was just because you consistently executed your strategies, not necessarily that you had the best strategies. And I may be paraphrasing, but I found that is what's really helped me as well. I
Yep.
don't have the best strategies, but because I'm not using my reptile brain and getting concerned about I can't trade now and I've got to stop trading and I've got to start trading and I'm not going to trade this one, and just making all those decisions, poor decisions that you make from fight or flight. Whereas if you just execute your rules and you're just consistent with it, you'll do so much better. um, and I think that's kind of the evolution of, once you have a good strategy and you've been able to test it, well, now you need to execute it, right? So,
Right.
um, I think I think it's great that you're building in that native functionality into your software. That's great.
I see. I'm just trying to read some of the chat a little as you talk here.
Yeah,
I haven't
actually,
been
I'm
able
going
to
to
keep
jump
up,
over
but
to that.
I see that somebody asked about documentation, so I'm just going to quickly, I just pressed F1 and you can't see it because I'm only sharing one app here. But if I switch over to the help window that just popped up, um, yeah, so you press F1 and it pops you into the help file, and this is the documentation, which really covers a lot of stuff. Basically, and this is also on my website, so mhptrading.com/docs, DOCS. So if anyone wants to read it there before you even do a free trial, you're welcome to do that.
I know
There's
this
a
is the funnest thing about developing software, right? Is keeping the docs up to date.
I put it, well, once I have it in place, I found a very good tool called Helpsmith, which which is fantastic because it lets you just maintain the doc in one place, and then it spits out various formats. I can generate the web version, the PDF version, the HTML help version, which is this,
That's
uh,
great.
from one place. So people tell me that the documentation is very good. So I'll take their word for it.
Good stuff.
Whoops.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is maybe, did you want to take maybe like a 2 or 3 minute body break and come back and we'll answer some questions?
I'm fine either way, but do whatever you need to do.
Okay, I think we should probably do that. Why don't we just take like a quick 2 minute break? I actually think I've been battling like a kidney stone or something for the last 4 or 5 days, so I'm going to need to step away for a moment, and I'm sure
Yep. And
others.
we're probably mostly middle-aged or higher males. So
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
Yep.
See,
So why
I'll
don't we
do the
do that?
same.
And then and then what I'll do, I'll keep the recording going. So for those that are listening to the recording, you can just kind of fast forward for a couple of minutes. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and I'll go through the chat and we'll pull out some questions and hopefully get those answered for the members and everyone will be happy. So we'll just take a quick 2 3 minute break, gang, and then we'll be right back.
All right. I'll take a break too, and then I'll come back and answer questions.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So I'm back. I'm not sure if you're back yet, Marston.
Just got here.
Great. Good timing. Okay. So let me open the chat window and let's just have a look at what kind of questions we have. So I'll just kind of go back in the chat here. Oh, wow. It looks like we have a lot of questions. Okay. So let's see. We've got some good feedback. Reports look good. Very impressive. Okay. So Ebert asks, can these studies analysis be imported into AmiBroker? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure what that means. How do you import into AmiBroker in general?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why you would kind of want to do that. Ebert, maybe if you can just kind of elaborate on that question, like what the intention is and exactly what you would want to import, and we can address that. Okay, so Atul asks, how difficult is it to learn real test? What type of documentations are available? Okay, so you You did cover off on the documentation. So can you give us a feel for how difficult it is to learn a real test?
It's a little hard for me to answer that because it's pretty easy for me. But the what I've had probably 5 to 10 users who told me they thought they couldn't program at all, and were kind of put off by a lot of other tools. But with a little bit of effort and a little bit of help, nothing major, we're able to get going with real test. So I think it certainly takes some effort to learn, but it takes probably quite a bit less effort than AmiBroker, for example. But it does take some effort. I mean, it's basically a general purpose back test engine with a lot of parameters, each of which you provide by formula. So it's a matter of getting to know how the engine works and what to use where. But with all the examples, I don't have enough videos. I need more videos. I'm the type of person who prefers to learn by reading than watching. So I've been reluctant to make videos, but a lot of people are asking for them. So I need to get on it and make some videos.
Yeah, it's just different ways of
But
learning.
right, exactly. So I'll do that.
It
But
definitely
in the meantime,
seems,
I do help. I do a lot of one-on-one support in the forum and by email and help people get going as needed. And people have done pretty well.
well, it definitely seems like at least when you get to the stage of having to do fairly complex things, that you can do a lot of that in real tests without needing to learn like something like a CBT,
Yeah, I
which
don't even
is
have something like a CBT.
exactly, which is kind because I know like even myself, I know how to use the CBT, but I kind of avoid it because I don't like the complexity. I want to stick more to the just the strategy rules. So
Yeah,
if
but I
I
mean
can get away with it, I won't use it.
the main learning tool besides the documentation is the editor itself, because you start to type like, oh, at this level you might be putting in a strategy, a scan, or scan settings, or you can always hit F2 to see every available thing at each level. So or now if you're in a strategy that at this level you're going to add a strategy element. It has something to do with, let's put in a limit extra formula which says, how much extra excursion is needed for a limit order to be considered filled. That's a useful thing to make sure your limit order based strategies are realistic. And then you would
Mm.
put the formula. Let's see, I don't know, the prior close times 0.1%, for example. So, as you're typing, it helps you. So that helps a lot. You don't have to really remember the exact syntax of everything. And then you can press F1 anytime to get context sensitive help. So between those two things and the example scripts and the forum, I think there's a fair number of tools for learning it.
Yeah, and I know the member that put us in touch, I believe it was Richard, who
Right.
connected us. He told me that it was much easier to use than AmiBroker. So, and I tend to believe that. Okay, so let's see. Our Horo asks, I'd like to know how the RT tested strategies get redone in your actual trading SW that is linked to the broker.
Oh, yeah,
SW.
I was going to get into that. I mean, I have my own automation software, which has some similarities with Alira and some differences. And before I built that, which was a couple of years ago, I always ran my automation out of Excel with some VBA code and some real-time data provider plugged in. I use interactive brokers for the real-time data for all the trading candidates I have at this point. I used to use other things. At one point I used IQ feed, and another time I used Nanex Ncore when I needed a whole market data feed. Um, but so yeah, it's too big a topic to get in this late at night of exactly how it works. But basically I run that scan that I showed earlier that has a different column for each of my strategies with its trigger price. And I plug that into my automation. The automation software includes all the exit rules. So it manages all the positions once they're entered. All it needs every day is the trigger price for each strategy.
Very cool.
So that's how I organize it. But some of the other users use the order list mechanism, like I was showing earlier, to generate an order list and use IB Basket Trader. Or for longer term, for like a monthly rotational strategy, there's no need to automate. You just generate the order list and see the text and manually enter them.
Right.
So that's the idea.
Very good. Thank you. Scott says, can we get the full documentation before either a trial or purchase?
Yes. Let me put that's exactly where it is.
Okay. Let's see.
I mean, that's the online HTML. If somebody wants a PDF, send me an email. My email is that, and I'll send it to you.
Okay, great. The other thing I can do is, if you wanted to send the PDF to me, I could distribute that when I distribute the when I post the notes, or we can attach it to the actual video.
I could. I mean, I think the doc looks better on HTML, either the online version or the version that pops up when you hit F1, which is also HTML. But
okay.
But it's okay in PDF also. So yeah, I can send that. It's a pretty big file though, because it's like 200 pages.
Okay. So Rick asks, does RT generate a trade list from each of the strategies? I think the answer to that was yes.
Yeah, well, not as separate files. It generates. So if I run, let's go back to the combined one, just for example, and run that. So the trade list, yeah, it includes the strategy name. So all the trades are together in the same list, basically. And then that can be copied to clipboard and pasted in Excel or saved as a CSV. If you want to generate separate lists for each strategy, you would have to comment them out one at a time and rerun the test that way.
Right. Or you'd have to have them set up just as one strategy, right? Correct?
Yeah. Now, I don't know, when the person said trade list, I don't know if they meant an order list for tomorrow's orders, or if they meant
that was my assumption. So that was
okay. Sorry, my answer was applied to a trade list.
It could be either. It could be either. So I think it's a good thing.
Okay, so currently, yeah, the order list is actually it's the same answer either way. The order list is for the whole script, all the orders in the script, and it includes the strategy. It's separated by strategy, or includes a strategy name. Now, I will
get that running the back test and having the orders clicked on in test output, correct?
Right. Now, I will probably, especially if there's enough interest in Alira support, I'll just go ahead and make that a built-in feature, and I will probably add an order file statement at the strategy level, because I know that it needs a separate file for each strategy.
Yes, that'd be great. That would be great.
Because otherwise you would basically have to comment each one out, run the test, and then drag the file over. So it would be a pain to do every day.
Yeah. Now, in terms of doing that, is there any kind of batch process that's included in the software in real test in order to do that every day?
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's I don't have a whole fancy like batch script language like AmiBroker does, but I do support command line options. So you can go to a command prompt and type, real test /scan and then a script name, or real test /test and then a script name. In the case of the order list, it would be /test. And then the script itself includes.
So Alira could even call that process.
Yes, Alira could call the process, and the script itself includes the output specification. So yeah, I actually have several users who automate their whole daily process. They have a Windows batch script that runs the Norgate updater, and then runs the real test import, and then runs the real test scan, and then launches their automation.
Excellent.
So it's certainly possible.
Great. Okay.
I personally don't do that. I like to kind of have a human involvement every morning and look at the candidates, but that's a matter of preference. I know some people are trying for full automation.
Yeah, I tend to just make sure that my stuff is up and running, and then I just let it do its thing.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm too emotional when I trade. I don't like to get involved in the process. I just
That
muck it up.
that makes sense for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so a tool asks, does the software come with strategies, or one has to develop each one? And then can you talk about data?
The
So,
software, yeah, it comes with that whole folder of example strategies that I
mhm.
showed, which are these. You know, there's I showed you most of the main kinds of ones that it has. So it certainly doesn't have every possible kind of strategy in the universe, but it has quite
It
a
seems
few.
to have a good cross section of examples, though,
Yeah, and
which is
some of them
nice.
are currently profitable. So some people have definitely used them as the basis for something they're trading.
Yeah, that sounds great. And then can you talk about data? So, as I understand it, you definitely have Norgate included in Yahoo. Does your real test software just pull from Yahoo directly automatically?
Yes, right. So, like for example, I showed that in a couple of these things. Where's the um, oh yeah, like for example, this vigilant asset allocation script. Yeah, so this is so all you have to do is write an import section that says data sources Yahoo and give the list of symbols. And these include lists can either be literal symbols or it can be a pointer to a text file that lists them all.
Just like a
Um,
comma separated list?
yeah, like for example, I have where is import SPX? Right. So for example, here, yeah, it's just a list like that.
Okay,
One per or it's space separated. I think comma separated might work too. I don't know. I just usually do it. So another way is to just do it like that or literal symbols, and you can and in fact you can include, like as I showed in my little fast spring thing, which is no longer on my recent files list. Um, you can also include, like this includes data from Norgate and Yahoo into one
oh
data file
nice.
because Norgate doesn't have those two, COP USD or CLP USD, and FastSpring does.
Nice. And you can stack, it looks like you can stack your data providers and you can stack your actual lists as well.
Yep, and stacking the list is useful when combining strategies. Like here, I could have just put all these symbols on one list, but it lets me refer in the strategy using this inlist function to, like I only want that to apply to the symbols from the first include list, and I want this to apply to the symbols from the second include list.
Well, it sounds like you've thought of everything. That's
And
amazing.
here, and this is, Yahoo has weird symbols for currencies with this
Mm,
equals X thing. And this greater than means it's like an alias. So that's the Yahoo symbol, and this is what I want it to end up being called in real test. So you can basically rename them during import using
very
that
cool.
syntax.
It looks like you've thought about just about everything, Marston. That's awesome.
Well,
Now, does it?
me and my beta users, I mean, it's just evolved over time, and I add
Absolutely.
things as they come up.
So does it just natively recognize if you've got Norgate on your system, or is there a plugin, or is it just
It
internal and
recognized, I mean,
seamless?
NDU has to be running. It uses the same kind of interface to NDU that Python uses. So yeah, as long as NDU is running, there's no plugin or any integration required. It just if NDU is running, it can talk to it and get the data,
Great. So
and
you've
it
got
fully
Nor.
supports all the special features like index constituency and what's that thing called, the corresponding industry index, and
Okay.
all that stuff too.
Okay. So you've got Norgate, you've got Yahoo. What about Metastock? Can you use Metastock as well?
I can use the classic, if you have the classic Metastock files on your local drive, like the old premium data used to use.
Hmm.
Um, I can import those directly.
Okay.
I cannot directly talk to the new Metastock format. I don't know if that's possible or not. If they even provide an API, maybe they do, but I haven't looked into it. But yeah, I can read classic Metastock and I can read CSV, in any with a lot of flexibility of what the column order is and stuff.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's see. Andrew says, after seeing RT, I feel very fortunate that I've spent minimal time trying to learn AmiBroker.
Yeah,
Well, that's a funny comment, but I mean, I honestly I think it's good to learn how to use both personally because then every software has a strengths and weaknesses. So depending on what your use case is, you may find that you need one versus the other. And like I say, is like it's nice to add tools to the toolbox, provided they add enough value. And it looks like your software, Marsten, will add enough value. Like I can already tell that I'm pretty keen on using it. So um, yes, I'll take that comment. I think is relevant for those that maybe are having a hard time and struggling with AmiBroker. It seems like Real Test might be a little bit easier to get started for sure. But it's when you've got a lot of different things that you might want to do over the years, you might find that one software might provide a solution and the other does not. So it's always good to have a couple of tools available to you. Let's see. Okay, so Rick says, yep, he spent a lot of time learning AmiBroker. RT looks really good. I agree with that. How often do you release new versions and how much do they cost to upgrade? That's a
um,
tools question.
I've been putting out a new version about once a week. I don't know if I'll keep going at that pace, but basically, I put out a new release when there's 4 or 5, between 5 and 10 fixes or small enhancements in it. I haven't done a major new, like some significant changes since the commercial release. There were some during the beta period.
And when was the
Um,
commercial release?
the start of this year,
Okay.
I yeah, I had several longtime users who were kind of pushing me to or encouraging me to release it, and I kept saying it's not good enough yet, but I finally just put it out there. But I'm still adding things fairly regularly, working on it pretty consistently. I structured the pricing, at least for now, as a lifetime license that includes all the updates that might come out in the next year after you buy it. So whether they're major or minor, it doesn't matter. So you would, and then I'll probably have an annual maintenance for some fraction of the initial cost. After that, for people who want to keep getting more updates, but you can always use the version you already bought forever.
Makes
Um,
sense. I think
so
that's a fair model.
it's
Absolutely.
pretty similar to what AmiBroker does and some other vendors, I guess. So yeah, I thought about a monthly subscription based, which probably would be better for me financially, but I don't like subscribing to software. I like to just pay for it and have it know that I have it. So
Okay.
I set it up that way.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, there's this new SaaS model, and it's some people like it and some people don't, right?
Well,
Um,
it makes a lot of sense for web-based stuff. I mean, I I deliberately kept Realtest as a classic desktop app
mhm.
because that's what I prefer to use for real work.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so this was a question that was sent to me privately, so I won't read off who wrote this. Um, and they didn't want to come off as rude asking this, but basically, with smaller software companies, and AmiBroker is the same. There's always the concern of, if I spend the time to learn this, what if something happens to Marsten, or what if something happens to Tomas and they walk off the sidewalk one day and get hit by a bus, God forbid, knock on wood. Is there some kind of a succession plan, in the future, right? And I know that's, I've had a number of discussions with members over the years about that with AmiBroker. We always wondered, what if something happened to Tomas? Is somebody going to maintain the software? Does somebody else understand it? Or are we going to have to ditch all the knowledge that we've accumulated over the years, and, the software is just going to die out? So the question is, do you have some kind of succession plan for the future? Or do you just plan to live and work until you're 100?
I hope for the latter, but no, I mean, this is all fairly new to me. This, this selling the software and putting it out there. So I think it wouldn't be fair to say I have a plan. I certainly have an intention. My general thought is that once enough people use it, someone will emerge who's a good enough C programmer and has the interest in helping work on the code. And ideally, it would be a younger person who would then be interested in taking it over in the future. And or I would certainly consider making it open source at some point if that seemed to be the best path. So I certainly have an intention of letting it outlive me if it wants to. I'd be surprised if in 20 years from now people are still using this sort of desktop backtesting software, but maybe I'm wrong. so yeah, I mean I'm open-minded about that, but no, I haven't done a lot of planning or I need to wait and see. I was skeptical that very many people would want to buy it. So if it ramps up enough where I could afford to start paying some helpers, I'm certainly open to doing so. But frankly, it'll be a challenge to find someone who still knows C and the Windows API that it's built on, which or what I used when I was doing that for a living back in the 80s and 90s, and that's what I'm most fluent in. So I kept going with it. But the new software isn't being built with those tools these days, which is why it's larger and slower.
But they would be using more things like C Sharp and things like that, I guess.
C Sharp, Java, or higher level stuff.
And I mean, your low level programming skills mean that your software is really fast. So,
but also that it would be a little more challenging for someone to jump into the code and understand what's going on and make changes without breaking things.
Right. Okay, so let's see. Scott says he really likes the look and possibilities of the software, but he's busy. Is it possible to extend the 1 month trial? He's not trying to scam actual live trading use of the software.
Oh, sure. I'm just flexible. If somebody emails me, I mean, I'm just a one-person company right now. As long as somebody's nice and a real person, I'll be very flexible about trial length, pricing, or whatever else you need.
Okay, that sounds fair. Appreciate that. That should make Scott happy. So let's see. Rich says after spending years trying to learn AmiBroker, he switched to RT 6 to 9 months ago. He's never looked back. Okay, that's a good endorsement. Rick says, oh, I think that's Richard that put us in touch. Thank you for that, Richard.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Hi, Rick.
Yep. So let's see. Good point about Montreal. 30-day goes quickly. Yeah, that's why I haven't trialed it yet, because I was spending a lot of time learning how to use Python. I'm not the quickest study, and I'm not a natural programmer, so I didn't want to take on learning something new while learning something else. So my thinking is, once I have at least a free week, well, you never have a free week, but at least a fairly clear schedule, then it makes sense to download it and try it.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that the trial version is identical to the commercial version. The only difference is the about box pops up every time you start it. So, so the only thing you actually get from buying a license, besides the satisfaction of supporting my work, is not having to see the about box every time. Other than that, it's fully functional.
Okay, it must time out after 30 days or so, though, doesn't it?
That's true. Oh, right. Of course, it does time out after 30 days. Yeah, okay. Sorry, confusing myself here. But if somebody wanted me to extend that, I would do that, and you would still see the about box popping up.
Okay.
But you could other than that, you could keep using it.
Okay. So Ebert says, man, using just a text editor is great, and it's quick to modify. Yep. For sure. So Wayne says, one thing I have with coding a script in AmiBroker, use a prefix in my scripts to make all variables unique. If I want to combine elements, typically it's fourish charter prefix. That is a short form of the name of the script itself. This makes combining coding much, much easier. Okay, I think that was more of a comment. Thanks for that, Wayne. Okay, so Rick says, does RT have the concept of different time frames for combined systems? So I guess multi-time
Yes,
frame analysis.
sure. I had another example of that, which I'll just quickly pull up. Yeah, this is the same combined strategies I showed, but implemented with multi-time frames. Although, personally, in my opinion, it's better to always develop a strategy on daily bars and implement the higher level time frame, with the strategy logic, because then you get better granularity for your stats and so on. Yeah, in fact, a monthly strategy will have an exaggerated Sharpe ratio, but that's a different topic. But anyway, this shows, yeah, like the asset class, bar size weekly, bar size weekly. This one is bar size monthly. Um, and
Okay, very
then,
good.
so in that case, all the constants in a strategy, the look back, like percent change C comma 3, that would be 3 months in this case because it's a monthly bar size and so on. So, and here's an example where, but we want to refer to SPY and we want to look at the daily 200-day moving average. So you just do that. So
Oh, very good.
extern SPY, extern daily, C is greater than the 200-day average.
So you can mix and match your time frames. And
Yeah, you don't have to do the whole like time frame, compress time frame, expand, whatever. You just refer to things.
cool. Okay, we have a number of more questions. Are you still good for a little while,
Yeah,
Marsten? Okay.
I'm okay for a little while.
Yeah, so I apologize. This has really gone over, and we've got lots of questions here. So
That's good.
um, let's see. So whatever we can't cover, you tell me when you've had enough and you're ready to tap out,
All right.
and uh, and then we can take this to the forum. People can ask questions, or they can just reach out to you directly afterwards.
Yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
if we get the majority of questions just for the sake of the recording, I think that'll help. And then the other stuff, they can refer to your forum. They can reach out to you directly. Okay, so Ebert says using is a cool way to call a function. If RT can be modified to generate trade signals for a layer, that would be great. I agree, Ebert. And it sounds like Marsten's willing to do that, so that's awesome. Scott says, sorry if you mentioned this and I missed it. Does RT generate the list of trades to buy and sell similar to AB exploration?
Um, it, yeah, I mean, it similar to AB. I mean, AB exploration doesn't do anything unless you code it, and a real test scan is the same way. You can output anything you want, but you have to specify it and say what you want output and tie it to things in your strategies. But in addition to that, real test has the unique feature relative to AmiBroker of being able to, where's the one? Oh yeah, as in this case, to actually write out the orders. Like you may have missed this, so I'll just run it again. So like those are the orders for tomorrow for this particular day trade strategy, which actually does place 40 limit orders every day. Um, and and then if you wanted them in the basket trader format, you would use a template that I provide for that. So now it looks like that, which can be pulled into IB Basket Trader. So in that sense, it does actually put out the order list for a strategy. You probably have to check it because the order listing is based on a back test and includes position sizes based on the back test, and it might not exactly match your existing positions. Because it's just literally saying, well, if your live trading had perfectly matched the back test, this is what your orders would be. So there's always a limitation like that with software that puts out order lists but isn't actually running your trading.
Very good. Okay, so Mark says, hi, Mark. You mentioned your trading is fully automatic. What does that mean or look like? So I think you said that we didn't really have time to get into all of that today, but maybe if you could just give them a brief overview of what that might look like.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I have this a whole separate piece of software that the only input that it gets from real test, I'll just pull that up again, is this. So I run this scan and it literally writes out trade runner candidates.csv. So that's my input to my automation. Now, the automation includes a lot of information like about the strategies, like what type is it? It's like this number could be a limit price or it could be a stop price. And then all the exit rules are in the automation itself. It has a fairly limited set of exit rules at the moment, basically all the ones I use in my own strategies, but they're in there. And then it literally runs everything. It runs, all day when the market's open and places orders and keeps track of stats, and it has its own stats display and graphs and things too. But so that is what I do.
Okay, very good. So Ebert says, thanks for that Alera trade signal. Cool, thanks. Okay, Ebert says, after seeing what RT does, my question is a non-starter. RT handles it all. No need to replicate this in AmiBroker.
Oh, that was a reference to his earlier question that we didn't
Yep.
know what it meant. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Scott says, is RealTest able to run script automatically from either an internal within RealTest scheduler or from an external program, Alera? Will
Yes.
scans, yeah, you did answer that. Will scans be automatically generated to input into Alera APM? I think the answer to that was yes.
Working towards that. Yeah, it's pretty close already.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because it sounds like we can just run a batch script from Alera, and it will just call all the functions that are needed and output everything, and it should be pretty seamless.
Right. Basically, each strategy in Alera would include a command to run RealTest and run a script to produce the signals for that strategy.
Right.
So you would have to keep your strategies in separate scripts for use with Alera.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Right. I mean, you could have a combined script that you use to back test them and study their relationship, and then separate scripts that you use for signal generation. I do that in my own. I have a different script where I do my back testing from the one where I do my daily scans, just to keep them both smaller.
Which makes sense. So that actually brings up another question. So when you combine strategies in your software, does it take into consideration if one strategy is already trading something, it'll skip it in another strategy?
That's up to you. I mean, my automation software does impose that rule of not allowing more than one position in the same symbol.
Does the
and
backtester?
RealTest doesn't do anything by default. But you can. So in other words, you can test it either way.
I see.
You can. The way I do that. This is not the right script, but I mean, just pretend this is part of a script with multiple strategies. I would use entry skip. Combined is a special word which means all the strategies that are running. So like combined s.equity is your current account balance, but combined shares is the total open position and the current symbol among all strategies. So if combined shares greater than 0, so I basically include that in my template, and so that makes my back test consistent with my automation, where it will not take the same position in two strategies at the same time.
That is awesome.
But you can test it either way.
Awesome. Okay, Rick says, did I miss the concept of trade delays in AmiBroker? Okay.
Yeah, I know, right. I don't have a trade delay function. I mean, I've never seen the point of using a trade delay greater than 1. I mean, it's really just the same thing as putting a larger offset in your setup condition. But I do have the most common use in AmiBroker is for trade delays to where you want to enter at the next open instead of at this close, and that I just used like here I could say it doesn't apply to, I mean, a limit order automatically. So one thing, let me back up a sec. So in AmiBroker, you have to really be careful, like when you're doing limit order entries, to make sure you're using the correct bar and so on. And none of that applies in real tests. So you would not need trade delays to make sure you're on the correct bar. For example, this strategy here, entry setup is referring to the most recent bar, and limit price is calculated on the most recent bar. Real test always uses the bar that logically was the most recent for that kind of strategy logic. Now, if I didn't have a limit price, then it would assume that entry setup that you want to enter at the next open. If you want to enter at this close, you would have to add entry time at close. So now it's going to enter at this close. So now the bar that entry setup refers to is today's bar. It's today's bar either way, but by default, it'll enter at the next open, or it'll place a limit order tomorrow at the next open, or a stop order. And it's the same with the exit conditions. So, I know if you wanted to do something like wait till tomorrow's close or wait till 2 days from now, you would just have to use those greater offsets in your condition formulas.
Right. Okay, let's see. Scott says, I think he's referring to the docs. He does like PDFs. It's easier to read on a tablet over a few days or weeks. Just scrolling down. Yep, that makes sense. So you can reach out. You can reach out directly, Scott, and I think Marsten said he could provide that.
Yeah, I'm just going to upload it to my website right now, and then I can post a link, and then anyone who wants can grab it.
Great.
That'll be simpler.
Okay, Richard's online. Good evening, Richard. Does real test handle multiple currencies, i.e. perform conversions when the symbol universe has symbols that trade in different currencies? Reason, some securities trade in USD on the Toronto Stock Exchange.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything automatically currently, although it does. If you're using Norgate data, you have access to the currency of the current symbol at any given time. So you could easily enough include conditional logic if you knew that was the case in your quantity formula. You could include, if the currency is this, then apply this, multiplier. And if you had the data for USD CAD, you could have your script apply the appropriate multiplier. So in other words, it can easily be accommodated, but it's not done automatically. But I haven't run into that yet. I may well try to add an automatic mechanism when you release your Canadian data.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, let's see. PDFs are also better for highlighting. I agree, Atul. Let's see. Rick says for RT, is the order list for buy and sell based on the strategy, including max position size for each system and open positions remaining, et cetera, basically a list of buy sell actions for the day?
It is. Yeah, it literally will produce, it'll produce the same set of orders that if you got another day of data and ran a back test that would have been produced in the back test.
Very good. Let's see. Will Tingo data work? I use it in AB.
Not currently, although I used to support it a while back, and then they made some change like 3 years ago or something. They made some change where the free data didn't work anymore, so I took it out. So I could put it back, but I don't currently have it. It would be fairly easy to put that back in because it uses the same sort of interface that Yahoo uses.
Okay. Let's see. Not that it's important, but can the RT editor be displayed in dark mode? My eyes are getting tired of white background for editor, etc.
Let's see. I think so. Yeah, I don't have a dark mode per se, although I do. Let's see, background color.
You need a hacker setting.
Yeah, right. You would have to. All right, there you go. You'd have to change some of the other colors, and some parts are still going to be white, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of sort of user interface customizability. Someone else asked me about, like, do you have skins like NinjaTrader? It's like, no, I'm probably not going to ever do that either. I'm just not that interested in certain style of look. I'm quite content with the old-fashioned Windows look. But
Yeah,
I can work
I'm
more
with
on,
you on that.
I can work more on dark mode if people need it, but you can kind of get it with the options that exist there.
Let's see. Our Horo says you missed my question about optimization. Oh yeah, so I apologize for that. So did so how does optimization work? Is I think was
Yeah, I
basically the question.
demonstrated that early on, but he may have come in later. Let me just quickly pull that up again. What did I use for that? I used the SP sector ETFs. Right. So the way optimization works is you have a parameter section. And so all the parameters you want to optimize, you put in here, and they can be lists of specific values like that, or they can be, from 1 to 10, step 2, or like, I end up, because I don't believe in optimizing lots of values, most of the time I end up just putting in the values I want like that. When you put in a list, the first one is always the default. And the same with a loop. If you don't say which is the default, it's the first one. So in that case, it would be 1. Or you can say, F3 if you want that to be the default. And then you can also do, like some people advocate, if you're going to do moving average lengths, you should really have it be geometrical. So you can do like, from 5 to 500 mult 1.5, for example. And it'll go like that. So anyway, that's how you specify your parameters for optimization. And then you just run the test in optimize mode by clicking optimize. And that opens. And this dialog gives you a lot more things besides optimization. I mean, you can optimize and select which parameters you want to optimize. And it shows you the value. And at any given time down here on the right, it shows you how many tests you're going to end up running.
And you have a number of different optimization modes as well by the looks of it.
Yeah, sequential combinatorial is the usual one, which does every possible combination. Sequential will do the first one and then keep the best value, and then do the next one and keep the best, and then best. And definition of best is based on score, which comes from your results columns. So, like if you wanted to optimize for MAR, you would select MAR. If you wanted some fancy fitness function, you would add a new results column formula for it, and then you select it from here.
Cool.
I usually use net profit, but and then
Genetic mutate. You should have called that COVID-19.
Yeah, right. What that does, it's not a true genetic optimizer, but it basically it mutate means so if you had 10 parameters, it would randomly change 5 of them, and then it would keep those values if it was better. When I used to over optimize, I put this in because if you have a thing which combinatorial would be 100 million tests, it can actually find the areas of best values pretty quickly. And then random, it just simply chooses a random item for each parameter each time. So I sometimes use that to just, like, I'll run 100 tests, which you can do over here by just putting in 100. And look at the median outcome and just say, okay, that's probably going to be what I'll get in real life.
In order to do this kind of stuff, you don't only have to be a coder. You got to be smart. You got to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, if you don't want to think about all this stuff, you probably shouldn't do systematic trading.
Absolutely.
I mean, so, but yeah, I try to be as helpful as possible. The software and as helpful as possible, not in the way. You can also in here. This is a fairly intense dialogue where you can do a lot. You can you can run your test separately for each year. I use that one a lot. Not with optimizing, but just to like run it year by year, so I can see the results of each year as a separate row. Cool. Or month by month. And then you can also use this for walk forward tests or for generating walk forward. By using, like, let's say you wanted to, so days, so you wanted to run your test 1,000 days and go every 100 days. Okay, so that's 56 tests, and then it can tell it to do that. Then you can create walk forward, and it'll put in the script a list of parameters for each data interval, and then you can run it in walk forward mode. So you can do the whole walk forward thing if you want. that way.
Cool.
Um,
Marsten, how many lines of code would you say your software is?
I ran a line count on it recently. It was like 40,000. So
Wow.
it's not that large actually. It's got like 20 source files. But so that's what happens when you run an optimization. You get each test becomes a new row in the results, and then every row in the results file has all the stats data behind it, so you can drill down to the equity curves. And by the way, all of these are specified by formula using those same stats primitives. So you can have the graphs be whatever you want. I provided a default set.
And you can add new ones, I guess, if you
Add new ones or
want.
change them if you like a different thing, and you can also zoom in or out. But then you can. I like this. Just kind of compare how it looks on. You go through the tests that way, or by drawdown or whatever. So that's useful. So
Is that going through all the different optimization
Yeah,
results?
every row here is one run from the optimization, and you can
Right.
see these. Yeah, here are your
It's a
parameter
separate
columns.
back test.
Look back, and then also you can that's the heat map mode, but yeah, you can graph it. I didn't go into this earlier, but this is interesting because this is a 3-parameter optimization. So you can change what's on each axis, and then for the third, it shows the average of the values of the third one for the two that you've selected. When there's more than two, in the same way in heat map mode. I don't do the fancy 3D thing like AmiBroker has, but really the heat map gives you just as much information.
Very good.
And similarly, like, see, this says average rate of return. So so this is like for all the tests where the look back was 63 and it took 2 positions, that was the average rate of return. Most of the time I just end up using clicking on columns to sort by whatever I want to sort by and looking at it that way. But
Right.
there are
Very
different
good.
ways to do it. So that's how optimizing works.
Awesome. Okay, so Scott says, what is your discount code if we buy as ABC members from this meeting? And then and then a wink.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll consider that. I can make a discount for people.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, I think thanks for saying what nobody else was everyone else was afraid to say, Scott. Okay, so Gavin says, can RT look at win rate of last 10 trades and adjust allocation position sizes based on that recent win rate? AmiBroker doesn't seem to be able to do that, at least not that I can figure out. Can
It's
RT look at win rate of the last
um
10 trades and
you
adjust?
can it's hard to do at the trade level. I can do it at I can look at the win rate of the last 10 days for that strategy. But yeah, no, someone's asked me that in the forum recently too, and it's on my list to add actually, but it's tricky to figure out how the syntax will be and exactly how it'll work. Because all the data is in here, the trade list is there as the back test is running, but I need to think of how to go back and summarize it. I personally, I know people like to, I need to support that because people want to test it. I'm suspicious of that idea as a trading concept, but because it assumes that it matters how a specific symbol has done in the past. No, actually, another thing you can do in the optimize is, if I get the right script here, there it is. Check that, and then it'll run the test separately for each symbol, and then you can see whether specific symbols have very different results from other specific symbols. I usually find that with at least the kind of strategies I test that nothing jumps out like that. They all kind of do the same over time. I mean, with this, the only time you see really extreme differences is when the sample size is too small to be significant. Like if one symbol had 2 trades, you just got to ignore that. I generally start looking at symbols that have had at least 20 trades before I even form an opinion, and then you don't see very much differences. But yeah, no, currently I don't have an easy way to say what was the win rate and I don't know if that person was asking at the symbol level or at the strategy level. At the strategy level, I think it makes more sense to just do how many days, and you can easily do that with the. You would look at like like maybe you would add an entry skip if the S dot. Yeah, that's the count of winning exits. You would do like S dot wins divided by S dot exits, or you can know the winning percent. Oh, right. How much? That's the dollar P&L of your winning trades. That's like for computing profit factor. Like you can do trade dollar, yeah, the dollar P&L of all trades that period, and the percent P&L, or you can do like the net profit or net dollars. I mean, there's all kinds of stats you can use, but they're all at the daily level, not at the trade level.
Right. Okay. Very good. Okay. So Chris says, thanks heaps, Marsten and Rick and Dave. I learned some new things I can test out in a couple of my AmiBroker strategies. I'll also be giving RT a wrap at our next mech trading group this Saturday. So you may well get some interest from some of the blokes here in Canberra, Australia. Cool. Who haven't yet taken the plunge learning AmiBroker. Really happy RT integrates so easily with Norget NDU2. Cheers and stay safe, everyone. Thank you, Chris. Let's see. Andrew says, awesome presentation. Thank you for your time on this. RT is a winner. Very good. Let's see. This presentation is good just to even get feedback.
It is. It's great.
Yeah. So Arhoro says, okay, I saw that, but was looking for a word like optimize to understand what those parameters were for. Okay.
There it is right there. Optimize.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Scott says, I really like this based on the demo. We'll probably buy if the trial use works out for me. But I put a lot of effort in AmiBroker. Touched on this earlier, but can you comment further on how AmiBroker and RT would coexist? With RT, do we even need AmiBroker?
It really
That's a personal question. Like,
yeah,
that's a
exactly.
very
That was my answer too. It depends on your own needs, and also it depends on what you already have in AmiBroker. Basically, the more you already have in AmiBroker, the more you would probably be likely to keep using it. And why wouldn't you? You already own it. It's already there. So
Yeah, I think like for me, the decision for me is fairly easy when I look at it. It's another tool that can do some things that AmiBroker can't. One of the things I really like about it is the ability to do multiple strategies and see how combining those strategies works. Because I found in my own trading, and this is something that I preach all the time, is that the path to success is not only to be consistent, but to diversify your strategies. Like for example, you alluded to this earlier, but if you don't run 100% of your capital using a momentum strategy on the NASDAQ, right? I was running a momentum strategy on the NASDAQ. Recently, I was up 23% in the first month, and then it drew down 40%. That was only one of my strategies. So my total drawdown was less than 12%, right? Once I combined 4 strategies. So for me, the ability to combine all those strategies natively and easily, to me, that's enough of a reason to try your tool. It's that one killer app that stands out to me. But I think for people that maybe want to have some different flexibility and have even corroborate some of their strategies to see how the back tests look on both platforms, to give you that extra confidence, might be another good reason. But yeah, I think it's a very personal thing.
There's always a few small. I mean, I've had some people who have asked me to help them convert scripts and want the results to come out identical, and you can get pretty close. There's always a few little differences that crop up for different reasons. But
okay, we're actually getting to the end here, which is great because we're at 10 o'clock now. I appreciate you staying till the end, Marsten. So Monte Carlo, Stephen wants to know about Monte Carlo.
Sure. I did not show that, so let me show that.
I think you touched on it briefly.
Let me pick a little example link. Just pick the the Nick thing because it runs pretty quickly. I don't care about tomorrow's orders. So this trade plot mechanism here is kind of you can select any result and go into trade plots, and it's trade level analysis. And there's all kinds of different plots in here, including the Monte Carlo and so on. Let's go back. And you can put in any formula. There's kind of a mini script editor right here. So you can actually sort by formula to do further analysis, but that gets a little more advanced. But so right, so there's so just to go through what they are, like that's your basic scatter plot, which I find it useful to just see a scatter plot of the trades in a strategy. It gives a quick feel for what it's going to be. That's, yeah, I know my histograms are horizontal, which is a little weird, but it's because I want to keep the same y-axis for all these graphs, and some of them aren't histograms. That's your distribution of gains, that's like MAE, MFE, or that's distribution of excursions, negative and positive on the same graph. That's a trade by trade equity graph, basically. Why is this looking so weird? I don't know. What time frame did I? Oh, I only ran it for 2020. No wonder it's looking so weird. All right, sorry. Let's do this again.
I like the earliest and latest. That's such an easy way to just say, I don't know when the data begins. Just you figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And for a scan, don't leave order list on. For scan settings, you just go end date latest num bars 1, and then you just means always use the latest bar. All right. For this kind for trade level analysis, well, we can just do this. I usually run without compounding, and then you can compare trades in dollar terms too. That's not what I meant. This is what I meant. Right. So yeah, okay. So now we're looking at the strategy for its whole time, all however many 13,000 trades made. So right, that's its trade level. That's like a trade station style. So you see here, it's automatically doing everything in log scale because it knows the test was run with compounding. But these numbers are ludicrous. I mean, you're never going to make $29 million running this strategy or whatever. So that's why I almost never use compounding. But anyway, so yeah, there's your Monte Carlo of equity curves. And if you want to see the details, you can see them here in the log window, like the percentile table stuff. So the format's a little different from AmiBroker's, but it's what I have. And then there's it gets annoying when it keeps doing that every time. I turned it off already. All right. Drawdowns. It's just showing the worst 10. You can say how many of the best and worst you want in the options dialog. And you can keep, like every time I hit M, I get a new random distribution. So you can keep doing that if you want, or have it do more. Right, and then you get this bin analysis. So anyway, yeah, I hope that answers the question about Monte Carlo.
I think so. Okay, so Ebert says, great stuff. Many thanks. Mark says, are there other RT experts that sell their expertise for a fee that are worth using other than the author of RT? So do you have an ecosystem of experts, or are you developing an ecosystem of experts that maybe provide services?
I think that might happen. I mean, I don't know of anybody yet who is, offering their time for money in that sense. Although I know some people who could. Honestly, I mean, most people find that they can build their own scripts pretty easily, with a little help to get started. And I don't think there would be as much of an industry around real test consulting as there is around AmiBroker, partly because it's not quite as customizable, at least currently. I mean, you couldn't hire someone to build, some kind of fancy rocket science indicator for you, because I don't have a way to do it. But yeah, it's a good question. It's one of those things that'll evolve, kind of like the what happens if I die planning. It's all very new at the moment,
Yeah,
though.
makes sense. I mean, you just released this, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's see. Just a thought, if you sent the output to SQLite, then it would be easier to generate a report that was the last 10 trades by ticker. Okay. Might offer more reporting flexibility too.
I
The
mean,
kill.
you can open the trade list, and you can have it when you run a test. You can have it automatically write the trade list to CSV, and then you could open it in whatever you wanted, Python, Excel, etc. If you needed to. I suppose I could write straight to SQLite, but I think you can read into SQLite from CSV, or
Yeah, I think so.
use Python to do so.
Yeah.
So there's certainly a path to that if that was important to you
Mhm.
currently. But I do also want to come up with a way to, in the script itself, to be able to refer to the last end trades and calculate things based on them, because the data is right there. I just haven't figured out the syntax yet.
Right. Might offer more reporting flexibility too. So the killer capability RT has over AB is the ability to run several strategies in parallel in the same account. AB can't do that. Okay. I agree. I mean, that is definitely one of the main advantages. Um, let's see. Thanks for the Monte Carlo explanation, Steven says. Larry says, you can't build custom indicators, question mark.
Well, you sort of can. I mean, you've got the data section where, and each data item can refer to previous data items. The way I think of it is, like, if you could build an indicator in Excel without writing VBA macro code, you could build it in Realtest also. Because the Realtest data section is basically like an Excel worksheet, except it propagates to every symbol. So it's like each item you add in the data section is like a new column in your Excel worksheet that starts with OHLCV. So at that level, you could build any custom indicator you want, but you can't write a function that has loop code and stuff like that in it. Realtest is not a programming language. It's just a script, a formula syntax in a script framework, basically.
Makes sense. Okay, so Andrew, oh, this is a question to Mark. If you join the RT forum, you can get all your questions asked without fear, without the blowback from the AB forum. And with that, we finished all the questions at 10:07. Very
Awesome.
good.
Yeah,
So
I do. I do have my forum, closed. Like with AmiBroker, basically anyone can go in there and join. I limit it to people who are actually trying or using the software. So, but if you send me an email and you say you were in this presentation, I'll approve your forum application.
okay, so that's a good question. So how do people reach you if they have questions or if they want to look at your website? Can we maybe just
Yeah, I can put so my website is just that. My email is that, and the forum is that. And if you're going to sign up for the forum, send me an email and tell me you saw this presentation so that I'll know to approve it. Because I get a fair number of people who just totally ignore the message that it says on the sign up page and sign up anyway. And like the message says, if I don't recognize your email, I'm just going to delete your application.
so you're saying people don't actually read what's on the screen? Is that possible?
It seems to be the case. Yeah. I mean,
I'm guilty of that sometimes too.
all of you people will be fine because you had to do the same thing to join this group. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, Marsten, I think I would like to thank you for, spending a solid 3 hours going through that with us. I was thoroughly thoroughly interested every minute of the way. I love what you've done with this software. I think it's amazing. I'm definitely going to try it. And I have a feeling I'll probably buy a seat of it as well, because I think it's a small price to pay to have such a useful tool. So I thank you for making it available, to the world, to make your work available and stepping up and doing that. And I appreciate the time that you spent here sharing your experiences, answering questions, sharing your software. It's been a real pleasure, to get to know you a little bit over today and the last time we had a chance to talk when we first met. And it's been a real pleasure just to learn, about your journey and some of the tools you use. And you're very open with sharing your ideas, and everything else. I think it's great. We're
Thank
we're
you.
a, we're a relatively small community. Systematic traders are a relatively small community, and I think that we can really grow together by sharing.
Yeah, I really like what you're doing with this user group,
Thank you.
which I had sort of heard about a little bit from Rich, but now I have a much better feeling for what it is, and I think it seems like a great group, and I had a great time. It seemed like the 3 hours passed very quickly. It's like my ideal audience. So what's not to like?
And
And
you've
I
had very low
will,
drop off,
yeah,
so a lot of
I will
people stay
make
till the
a.
end.
That's great. I will make a 25% discount code, and I'm a member now, so I can just post it on the forum for you people, and make it last a couple months, so you can use it. Just
Absolutely.
just
There
don't just don't go and tweet it so everybody else gets
there is
it.
actually a section in our forum for where people can post anything commercial. You can,
Okay, I'll look for that.
yeah, yeah. And what I'll do, if you send it to me, I'll send it out in the when I send out the recording. I can send that out as well so that people can just grab it right in the email that announces the recording. And I appreciate you doing that for our members.
Yeah, all right, I'll do that. I'll hope. Yeah, Fast Spring. When I first started selling it in last January, Fast Spring actually had a bug where if you were a foreign currency relative to US and used a discount code, it quoted the wrong price in the originally versus what you ended up paying. So I ended up taking away discount codes and adding a separate product that was priced separately. Anyway, so
It'd
that
be
bug might still be there, but
it'd be
but
great if
I'll
it threw a couple extra million in your account, though.
that would be good. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I'll send it to you, and all I have to do is think of a name for it and add it in FastSpring, and then I'll be able to send it. I'll make a
Awesome.
note to do it tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm not going to read everybody's comment, but there's quite a few comments coming through thanking you for the great presentation and your congratulations on
Yeah,
your
I'm
product.
seeing them all. Thank you,
Great.
everybody.
That's
My
awesome.
pleasure.
So with that, Marsten, thank you very much. I hope to have you on again sometime in the future. And I'm starting to regret that I called this the AmiBroker Canada User Group instead of saying it's the any software kind of user group for systematic trading and for this kind of thing that we do, because like I'm finding that my interests are expanding beyond AmiBroker. To your software, to Python. I may have to rebrand the group at some point in the near future. Um,
Hmm.
so, so for members, don't be surprised if you see a major name change in the near future. So again, Marsten, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it so much. And gang, you could have been anywhere tonight. You chose to be with us. And for that, I thank you as well. If you have any questions, the recording will probably go out tomorrow sometime. Feel free to pick up the conversation in the forum, or direct it, to Marsten's forum, in order to benefit, his growing list of users in case they have the same questions. So thanks everyone. I'm going to close down the meeting now. Did you have any closing words that you wanted to close with, Marsten? I didn't want to just cut you off.
Uh, no, just thanks again to everybody for your time and to Dave for agreeing to have me on. It's been great.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Marsten. And thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great night and we'll see you soon.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.